FPX come out top of the group, even with standings. Like, I
Woo!
think,
Okay.
like, if we actually had the full 5 players there,
That's
when they're
spicy.
playing the best, like, FPX is the best team in the world.
All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Valoranting for the 5th of July. Happy 4th to those that celebrate it. And if you didn't, I don't fucking blame you. Your country's weird as fuck. Welcome back, everybody. Obviously, look, a lot to talk about here on the eve, or what feels like the eve. It's not quite the eve, but getting very, very close to Copenhagen. Mitch is busy, shockingly. Van's got to prepare. Don't know why Vans isn't busy, but we'll talk about it later, maybe. Or we won't. That's also fine. Great to have back on the show, Dan Dryad, though. Thanks for joining us again, Dan. Good to have you.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Obviously, we're kind of keen to pick your brain a little bit on how the LATAM region and Brazil are starting to shake up a little bit for Masters. So we'll get to that in just a moment. Van Sus, I'm told by you, actually, not by another birdie, but by you, that you're back in the gym tomorrow or today. So good luck, mate. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
It's about fucking time, homie. All right, pleasantries aside.
This needs to melt.
Okay. Have you considered hot, like that steaming yoga? You know, where they put you in like a 40 degrees Celsius
I just
room?
I'm going to wear like 16 garbage bags when I work out today.
Nice. Okay, so all your Sentinels jerseys are finally getting used. That's awesome. Congratulations. All right, let's talk a little bit about what's been going on around the world of Valorant, right? Because I think we have like a lot of different topics to cover today. Not really the time to cover all of them in as much depth as we like. But what I want to do is get both your takes on sort of each one of them as we go through. Make sure everyone's up to speed. First up, Acend. Yeah, you heard it right. Acend, obviously one of the top teams in the EMEA region, sort of to date. Maybe having a little bit of a rougher VCT this time around. Have made a change to their roster, obviously, after exiting the playoffs pretty early, if I'm not mistaken, right? Wasn't exactly the most auspicious of runs for this team. But this is another team that, like, heading into LCQ, I think Liquid are in the same position, right, where they're making a roster change. Kicking Zeek off the roster. You kidding?
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned in his Twitter, or he mentions in his tweet, that he's going to have a tweet longer about it, which also comes out later as well. Just to summarize that it's not about the issues that stemmed from like a breakdown. It's more on having different directions into the game. Because even there was like a clip that came out a little bit ago about their bind game, and then he was like, one of the players like, listen to me, and then the swearing word in Polish. So it kind of shows that there's a little bit of like commotion going on within the communications of the team, and he's not like the main IGL for the team either, right? It's still going to be Bloons. He's still putting words into it, and I guess overall, when it comes down to how you want to gel as a team, he needs to find something different, probably very similar to like Slingy with Liquid, for example.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely interesting to see happening, because more than anything, more than Zeek just leaving, is who's gonna replace him. And I feel like that's a question that everyone has, right? And it doesn't make sense what he said about IGLing and the fact that he's not IGLing all the time, but he does it sometimes. That it just brands him as an incredibly valuable player to wherever he goes. And the fact that he also cleared out that it was not mental health, it wasn't anything related to that issue. It just makes you wonder if the direction that Acend said they're going for is the right one, or maybe Zeek had something going on that just at the end of the day didn't work out with everyone else.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. He's saying he's not like the main IGL on that team. It was Vac, right?
Yeah, I was mistaken on that one. So thank you, Mr.
Yeah, I mean, they made that quick roster change. Really quickly as well, before we go further on the show, massive shout out to Twitch, by the way, who've come on as a sponsor. So thanks for making this show possible. The fact
money from Twitch?
Yeah, the fact that this platform is allowing me to spew my thinly veiled vitriol under the guise of talking about Valorant every week is astounding. So thanks, and great to have you on board. Great to be here on the platform. Let's move on. Let's talk about GameChangers a little bit here. Because the main event in NA, again, I think this was the storyline last time, was that these unsigned teams are continuing to sort of, make deep runs and have a big impact in these GameChangers tournaments. And I think that I think it was just Dart Monkeys last time around. This is the upper rounds. You see that sort of Dart Monkeys fall to TSM X. But we have three? We have three unsigned teams that actually may able to make it through here towards the main event, right? If I look down that lower bracket, we got Dart Monkeys. Yeah. So what is this? Ariana Grande Perfume. Okay. And Sanrio's make it through here. And look, these are decent wins, right? Like GX3 are falling in this lower bracket. Xset's female roster are falling in this lower bracket.
Yep.
There are some pretty, Yeah, there's some pretty decent teams that are actually
Misfits.
falling down to these
Yeah.
squads as well. So, what do we sort of need to know about these things? Like, sorry, Ariana Grande's perfume. This one is a little new to me.
Definitely the most interesting name out of everyone else. I want to say for the start of Ariana Grande, they have some interesting run. This is the team that actually took down Version X in the last match that they had. It was a best of one, and they got taken down. They look really nice. In terms of what they're playing, I mean, if it's working out, there's no reason to change it, right? But they have Arena in a couple compositions, especially in Icebox. In a meta that doesn't seem like it's fitting it best. They have a kind of back and forth results. But overall, I want to see how far they're able to make it, because they also won at least some maps against teams that they're gonna face next.
Yeah, just the teams in general, like the 3 teams that are actually making it through that are unsigned are actually teams that are very, very skilled. I even think about Rios. I think is a couple of players that came out from like the 94 Toyota Super team, like the Pug that Arianicus kind of had before. So yeah, there's definitely some skills involved in those players, where almost at the Game Changers level, where just the competition itself continues to improve from event to event. When you actually do have the skill set to play aggressively and not be afraid to swing, there's also one of those moments where you could actually surprise teams like that who may be a little bit too overprepared in how they want to execute into their games. So we've seen that. I think there was a comment coming on from Jazzikins too during the Game Changers when they actually qualified into the game against Misfits. She said, you know, maybe it would be better or closer if Misfits actually weren't as afraid to swing against us, and then you'll see like what the real potential of Misfits has over the strategies that are involved in their gameplay.
And Misfits still going through changes, right? They're kind of in the awkward stage waiting for Fluorescent to be old enough to play. But, I mean, to talk about them a little bit too, because we haven't seen all these players to the best potential that they can give. I want to say I was surprised when I saw them playing Fracture just before they play against Cloud9. And I was honestly really, really impressed with their results. They were able to make it far enough, but just having Cloud9 in that lower bracket just turned everything into a nightmare. All the dreams just shot down for a lot of these teams, like Gen G, Misfits as well. Those were the ones that had to face them, and we know what happened.
Pretty insane, right? Yeah, you have 2 like pretty well-known teams that have to deal with Cloud9 White in that lower bracket. I think a lot of teams hope they just stay up where they belong. We'll discuss how this sort of happened. Dart Monkeys, still not assigned. You know, had a really close. Really close game against TSM X. I think they lost the last 2 maps 13-11 after smashing them in that first map. So that's it's got to be a little bit tough to swallow. Still though, clearing through that lower bracket pretty comfortably. This team is legit. Yeah,
I even think they made top 8 or something like that, even in the first series, right? So they did. They're definitely a team that puts a lot of work into it. They have a coach that I'm pretty sure during the Game Changers interview looked like she had a very good mentality to the game and understanding the strategic point of like how this team wants to evolve. And unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to watch too many of these games because as we're casting on the main stream or whatnot, they were running like 5 streams on NSG at the same time. But now we actually get to see them in the top 8 once again and see if they could actually impress even more. And they'll get that airtime. So hopefully that pressure is not going to get to them of getting more eyes on into the game, watching them.
And the one thing that Dart Monkeys is doing as well is that they're doing exactly what Cloud9 is also praising about signing up for competition, signing in, trying to play in everything that they can. I mean, you saw them in Game Changers Academy for pretty much every month recently. You saw them in Astro Clash. You also saw them in Sakura Cup. They're doing everything that they can. They're giving some good results. And it is one of the only teams, to be honest, that does this, that is unsigned. So it's pretty cool.
And no roster changes. That's the other important part as well, that C9 White has been criticizing a lot of the teams in the scene within Game Changers as, if it doesn't work out for a qualifier, the team like almost blows up. Which is why, again, you're looking at teams like CLG Red that didn't make it, Complexity that didn't make it. They went through so many roster changes with maybe like 3 players from the main core and 2 new players almost being trialed at the same point.
So this is our main event, by the way. So TSM actually have a rematch against Dart Monkeys in that first round, which is kind of sick. the three of these unsigned teams out of 8. I mean, almost half. Obviously, that's pretty insane. Also,
Yeah.
IMT and C9 in a rematch. Got to say as well, version X auspiciously absent from this top 8, and you better believe that Moonchopper took the opportunity to let Anders know that he knew that they weren't in that top 8 as well. I don't get it. We asked Anders about this little feud, right? And you know, he was obviously, you know, pretty diplomatic about it, but
Yeah.
homie seems a little butthurt. Yes.
Well, I mean, this actually happened when he had Anders on our show to ask about what he thought about you know, his team versus Cloud9 White, and he was saying, yo, this team is actually good, but not the best. They're definitely beatable. And then Moonchopper said, let me fucking show you. And then now, not only that, you also have version X not be able to even qualify into the top 8. So now I think if I'm in Moonchopper's shoes, I'm laughing even more. It's like you're not really putting your money where your mouth is.
They lost the Dart Monkeys, right, in the best of ones, I think.
And Ariana Grande's perfume, yeah.
Yo. Okay, all right. Well, Anders, mate, you better be whipping out them very complex flowcharts you were telling me about.
He's been humbled.
Okay. Trust me, if I know Anders, he'll bounce back in no time with some more spice.
Agreed.
Let's move on.
Agreed.
Obviously, Cloud9 Whites were DQ'd, right? There was a competitive ruling here where the map vetoes had to begin at 12:45, and Cloud9 White didn't have a coach in place until 20 minutes after that time and didn't sort of say why. And then after the map vetoes, they tried to rush and get the game going, but there were sort of no players to sort of be seen there. So by 1:15 p.m., so this is half an hour after the veto time, there was no players at all. And then it was only until after there was a forfeit, Cloud9 White coach, actually, it's the first time they mentioned tech issues. Super. I mean, not really sure about this. Also, tech issues, not sure about that one either. Either way, obviously, Cloud9 White were fine in the lower bracket. They'll actually get to have their game and get some mortals anyway. But fortunately, Mel and Zotek chimed in on this. You know, Mortals, first of all, didn't try and push for a forfeit win, which is good to see. Obviously, Cloud9, definitely there's a sense of culpability there because they're definitely trying to make sure that no one goes and rages it. You know, Nerd Street or whoever it was here. Obviously, you know, it is interesting. This team has obviously had some changes, right? Coach change. They've had a player as well. Obviously, with now Bob on this team and Zotek, who we spoke to last week, if I'm not mistaken, or the week before, excuse me. So some last minute issues. Didn't say tech issues here though. So, but it's a bit of a mea culpa moment, Vans. Just a bit weird, to be honest.
I mean, I get it from Matteo's point of view as well, right? You're playing Swiss format in the group stages, or the Swiss format in the beginning to see who qualifies. There was a lot of BO3 in the Swiss format. And as you know from the Swiss format, you can't get into the next round until all the matches are complete, because you have to go back through, like, quote unquote reseeding to see, like, who are going to be the 2-1 teams that are going to play against each other. Who are going to be the 2-0 teams that are going to play against each other, into 2-2s. So with that, it usually comes with a lot of delays, naturally, from just players waiting in the lobby for the next game. And once that game is done, that team that just finished is probably going to say, hey, we need like 10-15 minutes just to relax a bit too before we start the next game. So just to make sure that you run a tight schedule and make sure that you finish on time, because there's been also moments on the other end where even if there was no issues from like any vetoes or whatnot from other teams, you still had to wait a very long time. So I get that from the TOs to just wanting to get the ball rolling, but it also very much sucks when Immortals and C9 White had all 10 players in the lobby at some point ready to go, but it's just, too bad. You're DQ'd, C9 White, but
it was 35 minutes late.
Exactly.
In fairness. So.
And the grass is always greener side of Vansilli is, you know, we get that rematch now in the upper bracket. Tomorrow. So
what do you reckon, Dan?
To me, it seems like it wasn't even the time, but it was more the communication issues, that they didn't communicate it right when it was happening, but it was when it was already too late. So that's kind of what I gathered from everyone, the tweet longers and everyone else, because the drama here was that other teams, they've been allowed to play the match even if it starts later, but it does seem like they communicated the issue before. So I don't know what was going on. We don't really know what was going on or why they didn't notify Street or Riot before, but I think they could have waited a little bit long. I mean, they said it was 2 minutes late to the match. I mean, that's not the worst, right?
Yeah, but that's not the time. But yeah, 2 minutes. That wasn't the timeline that was expressed by the competitive ruling there. So I'm a little bit unsure about yeah, what that's about. Everything in the competitive ruling said they were later than 2 minutes in each of these instances. But it look, I think it's just bad optics for Zotek. Honestly, I feel bad for the guy. I guess if it's not his fault. The problem is we don't know, and there was no excuse given until fucking how long into whatever. It's just sussy. It's just mad, and obviously no one does a new coach. So it's fucking sussy.
Who said sussy?
Yeah, it's sussy. Go on. It's fucking sussy. Let's move on. This is so sussy, this one. Obviously, look, I individually in my sort of inquiries into casting around the world, something I'm particularly very interested in. I've come across this before, and I knew a little bit of shenanigans was going on in the APAC region, but not really to any level of detail. But Illustrato, former caster, I guess. I thought he was still a caster, but it's fine. He's got a really nice Twitter banner. It looks quite suave. Goes on record, talks about low pay, late pay from Mineski, which is an esports organization. Used to have teams, if I'm not mistaken. I guess they do production now. So Mineski denies that they pay below market rate. I think that's probably not true. I don't know what they think market rate is, but yeah. So this is for local Filipino casters. They're getting paid 50% lower than other organizers. So Illustrato goes on and says this bullshit, the crap. I don't really. He was sorry. This guy is represented by an agency that is part of Mineski's umbrella. Terrible fucking idea. Do you honestly think I'd be represented by like a Blizzard subsidiary? Like, maybe you have no choice, but like, also, if you're not getting paid for cool, don't get an agent, because they take a cut of what? Like, if you can get the gig yourself, why are you whatever? It doesn't matter. Either way, there's more about this, and we actually had a confirmation on this as well, because I think we asked Dax if this was happening, and if there was this issue with they put me on full screen, haven't they? They're expecting me to say something really, really inflammatory, aren't they? Yes. But we asked Dax, and he said, "Is this true?" And not that we don't believe Illustrato, but he corroborated this and said that this has been an issue. I also know that it's been a bit uncomfortable because, so $20 a day, presumably for observers, which is kind of insane. And yeah, obviously for Illustrator, it's not enough money.
20 a day?
Yeah, well, I mean, for observers, right, which is kind of insane considering just how taxing that fucking job is, just quietly. And then he's complaining like all the money we get paid goes back into bills and stuff. I'm like, yeah, because you're trying to be a caster. Like, no offense, guys, but like, you have to. If you're a caster, you have to realize you're either a full-time caster, or casting is a hobby that might pay you sometimes, and then it can't be like, if you try and turn casting into your main source of income when like that isn't viable, then like, I don't know what to tell you. It's just not a fucking good idea. It's just not smart.
Sorry,
I go on. You're a caster too, allegedly.
Just because I was surprised that it's $20 a day, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, what is $20 in Vietnamese dongs, right? And then I was like, oh, that's still pretty fine, to be honest. If it's $20 a day.
Well, it's not, is it? Because these cons are saying it's not.
Well, it depends. If it's still 50% less than what everybody else is getting, then technically I could see that point of view. But in terms of like how much the cost of living is in these countries, then that's actually quite a lot, to be honest.
Yeah. Sometimes casters get paid late because generally, like, it's vendors or sponsors that are providing that part of the budget. But I would say that like the market rate for casters should be at least in the United States. Now, it can differ based on locale and cost of living and stuff like that, but like, should be $800 to $1,000 a day US.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I consider for a professional full-time caster. That is what you should be getting paid. Not getting paid that. If you're getting paid half that, then, I would sort of suggest that you are, maybe a tier 3 caster. Maybe you're doing like half day rates, something like that. But like, you have to understand that like top casters are asking and getting $800 to $1,200 a day for casting, and that is for 4 hours or 8 hours. It's not. We don't do half day rates in this industry. That's just something that TO's invented to save some fucking money, and you dickheads accept it because you didn't know better. Now I'm telling you, all right, don't do that shit. But I know like it's a complicated region as well, because I know that like the APAC qualifiers include like Oceanic teams, and there are also Oceanic casters there as well. But the APAC casters and the Oceanic casters all speak English, as well as some of these APAC casters speaking like Tagalog or what other, like regional languages as well. So then when you actually have like an APAC like qualifier, like LCQ, for example, you have, Vietnam, Thailand, Philippines, Australia, presumably, those teams all in one. And then like the Aussie casters just cannot do it because the rate is just fucking unbelievably low. Like, it's just, you would never accept that kind of rate because that's like what is being offered to the APAC casters and what they're accepting. You have a weird melting pot of regions there that like really complicates. Europe's not as bad because they're on the fucking euro, aren't they? Right? When you've got different currencies and different sort of structures and cost of living, it gets really muddy. It's not something I've managed to penetrate to a great degree, but I've had Aussie casters go, we're getting fucked here. We can't really do any regional events because they're not going to offer us anything approximating a reasonable rate. All right, let's move on. Team Liquid, obviously, are trying to get their roster ready for LCQ. And we kind of knew that, in Reykjavik, last time around, we felt like they were already kind of splintering before that. And they weren't even supposed to be there. But because other EMEA teams couldn't go, it ended up being Liquid. And they did about as well as you would expect them to have done. Dreamas has said that he is no longer a temporary player for Liquid Vansilli. So this one hasn't quite worked out, even though this guy really big, really heavily talked up. What was on like London United, right? Mitch is like a huge fan of that team, but also this guy. But it didn't quite pan out, I suppose.
Yeah, I think it's also in his tweet longer he was mentioning that he was playing a center role before going into Liquid and having to learn like much different roles, much different type of play style too, where he had to be, if I'm not mistaken, a little bit more passive and try to figure out how it was going to fit within Team Liquid. And you're already joining in like when it was what, week 3 or something into groups when you're still trying to qualify into playoffs. So you didn't have that much time to work with. You didn't have that much time to practice. And then you did your best that you could. I know we kind of like harped on him from time to time when he first started the Sage role. It's like, oh shit, he missed the wall, but overall he still played pretty decently. But again, it's one of those things where you're hoping to make it through, hoping to make it to Copenhagen for Liquid. You look at who's available in terms of free agents and whatnot, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, and then both parties move on to the next thing.
What are they going to do though? What's the player pool like in Europe? Do they bring Link back now that this hasn't worked out? Do they need to look for someone else? How long till the APAC? How long until the EMEA LCQ? How long do they fucking have?
I think LCQ is usually in August, right? So they're not too long. I think it's like the next month and a half.
It just seems like since the never find the answer. We know it's great now.
Okay, there you go. So, wait, you're using an American date format, so it's 7th of August, right? Is that correct? Jesus, okay. Wow, that's happening in real time. That's kind of sick. Obviously, VMix has been a pain in the ass. Should be back right now. I think, someone said Zeek in the chat. Rusted Silver, obviously, crafter of only the best and most sort of intellectual takes in that chat. Not terrible. I don't know if the compatibility is really there, but like Zeke's definitely a proven quantity. So we'll see. Let's talk about IGLs then. Come on. I think this is the least understood role in the entire Valorant world. And we, my friends, are going to make this even worse by arbitrarily choosing our favorite based on factors we can only see with an eye test. How does that fucking sound? I choose FNS. All right, nerds, good luck.
What?
And why do you choose FNS? No, I'm kidding.
Because I mean, the guy's brain obviously works overtime because his brain generates so much heat that it burns all of his follicles. Yeah, you can see you can see that like there's like a fucking fusion reactor in that head. Guy's pumping helium out of his ears. Most efficient sort of thermodynamic process you could imagine. I don't know how he has such a powerful skull that controls like the plasma, right? That sort of, it's been sort of theorized you can only use very strong magnets in a toroid shape to keep plasma controlled and actually have a nuclear a fusion reaction. This mother's head's like the sun. His head's like the sun. Look at those widow's peaks. I can tell you, they're going back and back and back. FNS all the way, baby.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. I think also with a coach as Chet that continues to change all of these compositions for OpTic very often, and FNS has to try to make that work in terms of like, okay, today we're going to try this, and then they're running a different strat, they're running a different playbook. They have to play against other teams that might be changing compositions as well. I think he's doing a great job at that. The only thing for me, though, is with OpTic, although they've won Masters Reykjavik, we still had a couple of like drops within the end of the stages of and also in playoffs, of course, when they lost to Acend. So that's maybe why sometimes FNS, the stonks may have gone down a bit, but you still have to think about the overall picture, how they're still at the forefront, under like creating new meta, and then also winning Reykjavik. So I give that.
But also his forehead is like mine, and I feel a
Yeah.
kinship with him. I'll be honest with you. He also appears to have some issues with his facial hair coverage. I also do as well. You know, and I think he's done very, very well to sort of to curate that particular facial hair. But all the stuff you said as well, Vance, but a little bit what I said, and like a little bit of what you said. I mean, you kind of did my job for me and actually did the academic part of it, which is great. Also kind of cringe, but you know, thank you.
I am
now
cringe.
You get to pick. Go on. Let's talk about. Look, seriously, we have you guys here, so we might as well make use of, you know, the two of you as resources. Let's talk about some of your, you know, your candidates or your favorite IGLs going into Copenhagen. Can't choose FNS because I've already given the best possible justification for that, and there's no way you could have come up with that on your own. So you'd only be copying me at that point.
Yeah. Shit. Well, at this point, I know people want me to go for Boaster. I know maybe go for Loud, but I'm gonna have to go with probably one of the least favorites to out of the favorites to actually win. I think I'm gonna give my IGL of Copenhagen to Benkai.
No, I was gonna pick.
You're gonna pick Benkai? No, I'm picking Benkai. I thought you were gonna go all out because you're even wearing like green on the fucking show today. So
you guys are so edgy. You guys came up with the same dark horse top IGL. All right, go on, Vance. Tell me why.
I think we already see it within the APAC region how PRX continues to be at the top, but not only that, playing to a weird ass standards that is. You think Schmieg is crazy in North America, but this is even crazier for PRX out in the APAC.
Yeah.
And it makes it they make it work. And Benkai is able to do a lot of the switches between forcing Forsaken and Jing to be hyper aggressive in their entire half, but also at the same time be very good into like slowing down the pace, playing your angles, and playing based on information. And he's also a clutcher. If everybody else dies, you should have seen the game against what was it? It was the grand finals in BO3. So it was Xerxia, where he's just popping heads with the fucking sheriff left and right. I think Benkai is definitely underrated because of all of the other amazing IGLs that we currently have in Copenhagen. But he's going to be my favorite here.
But also, he has great memes.
Yes. Great personality. And I could definitely cope with or be on the same page with his silliness because I like to be that silly too.
I like the energy that he has a lot, and yeah, for the crazy shit that we see this team running, you need a good IGL, and it's giving them results. We saw it in Masters 1, and now they look even better. So you know he's doing his job right, and I feel like that energy also plays part of it. And same in the kind of in a similar way that we see for Boaster, you just need someone to know your team's energy, how to make stuff work out. So he does it really well. That is why I was gonna pick him. But thanks, fans. I appreciate that.
Now you can go into your pocket pick of being loud, the loud supporter.
So no, listen. I also have pink hair, so I could go with the crew. But
that's true. That's true.
Now I'm stuck because I feel like I should choose Boaster because I expected one of you to go with Boaster.
Yep.
But I want to go Klaus, and I think I'm gonna go Klaus because it just what has to be done. Klaus and crew, the only team that has been in every single international event. They proven results last time, and I know we're gonna get the chance to talk about teams eventually in a little bit, but is a team that has been incredibly consistent. Is a team that, yes, sometimes and for the last Masters was struggling a little bit, but that is for some external issues that they were going through. They couldn't scrim against the best teams. They were banned from a server with Brazil, which allows them to play. So it was difficulties that they don't have anymore. So a team that has been consistent only proves that the base, the core that they have going on has been working on, including Klaus on the IGL, including even the coaches that change. It doesn't matter. You have the core team, you have the team that has been staying together, you have a team that knows how to work around Klaus. So, I mean, that's my pick. Yeah.
All right. I don't know why we pulled this tweet from Klaus, but fair enough. Hi guys, that's Klaus on Twitter. Yeah,
that's Daniel's
all
traveling.
his
Oh,
tweets
fuck,
are like that.
What's the alias on Twitter? We're gonna post.
Good. I love that. Love that. Yeah. Okay. Look, all decent takes, but I'm gonna say right now, the Pooj ain't no stooge. He's coming for all of you in Copenhagen, and OpTic gonna fuck you up. That's all I'm just saying. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about. Okay, so I don't get it.
Thanks.
Yeah, I don't get it. What are you indicating to me, Daniel? What am I looking at?
He's going to Copenhagen. He's going to
Yeah.
Copenhagen. Oh, that he
he's
found
got-
the alias. He found the alias. That's
Oh, is
what
that because
it
he
was.
still has OW
Yeah.
in his handle? Yeah, I mean the guy was like a sick player, and he represented Argentina in multiple World Cups and was disgustingly good. Unfortunately, the rest of his team kind of poo-poo. There you have it. Let's hope that's not going to be the case this time around. We know it isn't because we're not Cruise like. All right, I want to dig a bit more into the LATAM region because I want to understand their format. Our regions we have different formats here, and there's definitely a feeling like Riot has been road testing a couple of different approaches for getting teams to qualify for Masters, right? Every region's different. Some of them really complex. APAC, LATAM, some of those have to be handled differently. But we saw some tweets from Anders, who, as we know, is someone who watches a fair bit of that. I think he scrims a bunch against the APAC North teams, for example. He feels like a very backwards seeding process. So I don't really know what he's getting at here. Well, sort of these are his tweets though. Anders, a little bit cryptic. You know what I mean? Obviously, a bit of assumed knowledge here. We do a combined LATAM North, LATAM South, Brazil playoff in the first place. So there's a real hierarchy established, and each region has their fair shake. So what's the issue? What is the actual format here between Brazil and LATAM, and what is the issue for people?
So correct me if I'm wrong, Dan and chat. So because we have potentially 2 Latin America teams and 2 Brazilian teams going into Masters Copenhagen, where Loud already won Brazil and then Leviatan won LATAM. So then that leaves a matchup in the qualifier between LATAM and Brazil of a Crew versus Leviatan. Crew versus NIP. So if NIP won, then that means there would be 2 teams in Brazil for Copenhagen, which then naturally would be Loud going in as a top seed because they won their group stages. But since it's actually Crew that won, so there's 2 LATAM teams, but because Leviatan is the one that's making it out of groups, then you also have the other one going into the lowers, and then Loud is going to have the lower seed, I guess, at this point, right? So you kind of need an NIP to win so that Loud could actually make it out of groups, which was kind of weird in that sense.
Yeah, so that's the main point, right? The Loud is going to play from the group stages, which doesn't really make sense for the run that they had for Masters 1.
Yeah.
And the thing about this is that when you look at last year, you look at Crew's run at the end of the year, everyone was saying Latin America, they deserve another spot, and Riot, trying to appease all and try to deal with that situation, they did kind of a half spot, right? Brazil, Latin America, because they expected the same amount of consistency for Latin America. Now, this year, actually, the story changes. Now you have Loud, the team that is being the most dominant, having good performance. So now that half spot that you get for Brazil and Latin America doesn't really make sense. And the decision that Riot made at the end of last year, it was mostly regarding Crew's run and acknowledging the run and acknowledging that maybe this is a region that deserves another spot. Now you see that it doesn't make sense. To me, it works fine. It makes sense at the end of the day that you're giving that spot in the last chance qualifier to happen before the international events.
Right.
The issue, if I find it is not really on who qualifies, but how Riot is determining who goes to playoffs and who goes to the group stage. And it's not only for Latin America. I mean, OpTic is also in the group stage. So clearly that is not the issue that we have. It's just, or OpTic being able to, I mean, you look at Paperrex, you look at Leviatan, it just doesn't really make sense the way that they address who goes into playoffs, even for the one team regions. And yeah, I mean, Latin America, Brazil, they're fine. I like the way they're playing. It's just maybe a pre-match that has to be played, maybe points that work in a different way depending on wins, something like that, for it to make sense, that to take into account that qualification and to avoid the group stages.
So one, no pressure to Leviatan once we get into Copenhagen, because everybody wanted a second place, a second spot for LATAM, so hopefully they'll do good, and then they'll justify the 2 spots that we took away from NA.
They don't get to play in groups,
LATAM, right?
And it'll be like fucking the guard all over again.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
that
see.
is the thing. That the way that I see Leviatan right now, it's just basically the guard last year, where they're young players, shy, 17. They have a lot of potential. They can do a lot of great things, but do they have enough time? Can they even get enough experience if they're not playing the group stage?
I want to talk more about Leviatan with you in a moment. I want to circle back very quickly though and talk about. Oh mate, there wouldn't be attack FPS without a motherfucking coach bug. Holy moly! So, what we found out recently, this is Xerxia, this is June 29th, it's not so long ago, points out there's a coaching bug in CS, and it basically is allowing you to, this is the same one that Emmy spotted, right? This is the minimap coaching bug.
Yes. It's somehow like in a coaching, or when somebody gets dropped from the game or something like that,
Look at the minimap
and
chat.
comes back in, you'll start seeing that. Look at the minimap. You'll see some pings on your minimap. And not only that, those pings actually move. And it's not specifically accurate, but accurate enough that it's still accurate by like 10 seconds or something like that, right? So there was even an example with Inox of what they were saying is, you kind of already had an idea of where the site hit was going to happen, so you could already know within the scrim where you could actually place yourself and position yourself and play the stacks. So that kind of sucks in that sense. And I think Imi also mentioned that he's encountered something very similar, maybe not as severe as before, but has reported to Riot as it was happening, as you could read in the tweet right now. But definitely the new one that popped out within the latest patch or whatnot seems to be the one that is a lot worse than what it used to be.
It looks like it's like a 0.25 hertz refresh rate of the positioning of those players. So it's like an old-fashioned radar in a way.
Yeah.
So this was spotted, and apparently there's a fix. Like the patch has been deployed to the esports service as well, and they're going to keep an eye on it here. But obviously, let's be very clear, it throws the competitive integrity in a question, right? How long has that been present? In what matches has been present? There's no way to know. What we can say at least is that we're not dealing with Valve here, and it's not like, some coaching bug that persisted for many months that teams kept quiet. I think people have learned their lessons from what happened in Counter-Strike, and they've reported it as soon as they possibly can, because it's worse than the CS coaching bug, where, like, I think it was being pointed out by Inox, you could just sort of see around the vicinity, right? This lets you see what's happening in the entire map. Their positioning was on the mini map, which in obviously attack shooter is unbelievably important there. So potentially an even more game-breaking bug. It's been caught early because a few individuals in the Valorant world realized just how fucking bad it would be if they didn't mention it, and then someone found it, and then they got realized they were using it. So
and hopefully it gets fixed on time, because now you're getting into Copenhagen.
Fix has been deployed, so yeah.
Yeah, well, hopefully, right? Because now you also potentially have to play on an older patch, or like the same patch, whatever new comes out. But the good news is that people are behind. They're going to have admins behind the monitors that are going to be able to watch at least the games if something else happens. But if it does happen, the downside is that you don't have like as good as a match medic as currently exists in Counter-Strike, for example. So hopefully, if that pops up again, or hopefully it doesn't pop up. Right,
you can roll back. You can roll back rounds and stuff on the tournament clients, right?
You could roll back rounds. You could roll back rounds for sure. If I think, is it with enabled cheats? I can't really remember, but it's still very difficult to, like, even for us with the Boomerangs League, we ran into an issue the other day, and then it took us like 45 minutes to like match medic the right amount of money for everybody as well. Okay, so we actually have it going. So we'll have to see. Right. Hopefully, knock on wood, we don't need to talk about it during the Masters.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then let's move on and let us talk about Leviatan, which is a team that obviously the West, those that don't watch LATAM specifically, probably don't know about, right? This is also a team that we won't get to see until the playoffs. We won't get to see them in groups. So it'll obviously be quite a showing for the first time. And there's a chance that, like, this team is going to be up against it. We're going to have to hope that they can really watch very closely what happens in the group stage. But talk to us about Leviatan, Dryad? What should we expect from this team? And tell us about some of the individual standouts on this roster.
Yeah, absolutely. So for Leviatan, this is a team that has been consistent in terms of getting second place after crew every single time, every single playoffs that you watch for the past year or so. It's them always getting second. And it is not even a second that gets close. It's always crew almost being able to stomp every single time. Now, this time around, there was a surprise, right? With crew losing 3-0 for the finals. There were a lot of things going on in that day. Like I see, it was a LAN and there were some pauses and whatnot. But now, regardless, Leviatan, this is a team that has been going up and up since this year. The reason why is because they got both of Crew's coaches from last year, the ones that made that incredible run. They got Anur and they got Batoni. So they steal the Crew coaches, they put them now in the Leviatan roster, and now is when you get to see the results. Individually, the players are great, but I think the biggest impact that you see is from these two. I think there's some statistics about Onura. Every time that he asks for a tactical pause, they're like 75%. Right after that, he's getting rounds and multiple rounds in a row. So it's an insane impact that he has. He also is a very mental coach that really knows how to tackle those issues that can be a concern for Masters, for sure, for these players. And now there's a couple questions. One great thing, Takalija is just fucking insane. It is one of the best chamber players I've ever seen. He knows how to play to the same level, I would say, of VA. I feel like he's able to match that level too. And if you're going to see a crazy run from Leviatan during playoffs, it's going to be because he is doing great things and the rest of the team is supporting him. Everyone else, Shy started playing in this roster literally a month ago on the 2nd of June. And he's doing great. He's 17. He's doing great. He knows how to play without Sova. He has a lot of variety in that pool for initiators, which it seems like it's why Honor decided to pick him. But now it comes to a term of inconsistency for the duelist. For King, sometimes we don't see him performing to the best level, and I feel like he's being pressured to play with the Neon, with the race as well.
Yep.
And yes, it gives him some results, but it doesn't seem to the level of Kesnet, for example. So this is a team that, if they're able to support their chamber, if they're able to support Tech Collegia the way that they've been doing, the way that they did it against Crew, they have everything to make a crazy run in playoffs that no one is expecting. But you also have to account for the no LAN experience besides the grand finals and the last chance qualifier, or the grand finals and the semifinals that they had a couple of weeks ago. And you have to account for maybe a lack of that international experience that only the coaches really have.
Mechanically, the team is good in terms of, I agree with Taco and with Shy, both excellent players. Macro-wise, I don't think it's the best team. Even when you're watching which map was it? I think it was the first map that was on Haven. They do a pistol round and then they smoke themselves out of Long C and get defused on by Crew. So you're trying to figure out how you want to play the pulse plants or whatnot, and I think the jitters might get to them, and that might force them to maybe choke some rounds. The advantage, at least, that comes to save them is that they do have Owner, and they also have Betney that can actually help out into those timeouts where you recompose yourself, because Owner off timeouts for Leviatan, they actually have some great successes of round conversions and round wins coming out of timeouts. But in the initial rounds, you got to make sure that those mistakes don't happen right away, because you're going to burn out your timeouts too early, and then you won't have time to really readjust into the late game. There's a lot going into that, but I do agree that Taco, very, very good in terms of getting these insane, like, rush out the window, get a kill before he gets hit, and TP away, and catches players like even Kesnet off guard when Crew are trying to set up a default. So I give them that, but I don't know if they're going to make that much of an impact into
I feel like if you really want to like, if people really want to understand the way that Leviatan plays, usually you don't watch the grand final, you watch all the matches before. I think that's just a good insight for the grand finals. It just felt odd. It just felt like everything that Crew was practicing, everything that Leviatan was practicing was just off. I mean, you look at the results, they play against each other twice before that, and it was Crew dominating, then it was Leviatan that couldn't really find an answer. even less than you saw them for Masters 1 and for the preparation for that one. So I feel like you gotta watch all those matches before you get to see a little bit more of the creative plays that they come up with. But I do acknowledge that if it was for me, I would have them play in the group stage. Maybe I would have crew right into playoffs if you could make that decision, because to me they really need that experience. And when you get to playoffs, do you really have a chance to get enough practice and get enough momentum going from what you did before?
I think it's very difficult, especially for teams less LAN experienced. You know,
Yeah.
we definitely use the Guard as an example of this, and they were such a good team in NA. They were the best in NA at the time, and still weren't able to do anything. And push came to shove. So keep that in mind. Let's move on and talk about more NA teams in turmoil. For LCQ, Sentinels will be playing without Sick, and Raucous is going to be filling in for the remainder of challenges. This was obviously June the 1st.
Mm-hmm. It was still during the group stages, and then you know, there was a moment looking at Sentinels when it was the last 2 weeks of NA VCTs. That 4th week they had to play with 2 subs, and then on the last week there was only Sick that was replaced there by Raucous. But then after that, you know, there was a tweet longer that came out a couple of weeks ago from Sick, mentioning as to, you know, why he had to take a break, some family emergencies. That also, you know, he felt like he was a little bit something was affecting his mental state as well to be able to play the game, so he wanted to take a little bit of a break. So now that he's able to come back, also saying, hey, we're going to get some streams up, we still have a confirmation though that he's not going to be playing for LCQ. So that's you know, for me, I just hope for the best for Hunter, for Sick, and that everything goes well. You know, health over everything else. We're always a strong adamant of that on the show. So hopefully it pans out okay for the poor guy.
Yeah. You know, I think that seeing Sentinels walk into LCQ, I don't think confidence in that team, regardless of Sick situation, is particularly high. Obviously got confirmation from Shazam on what's going on. He was very brief about it, but he was very clear.
Sick is not coming back for LCQ. He is not playing LCQ.
What a year it's been for this Sentinels roster, hey? I mean, my God.
Yeah.
They've really had to adapt to some fairly insane circumstances, but that's the reality of it, right? Changing of the guard in North America, and Sentinels unable to maintain that sort of dominance of old. So Vans for LCQ, we don't know who they're picking up though. It's not necessarily going to be Raucous, right? It was more of a temporary stand-in for challenges.
Yeah, unless Dapper's just trolling at the same time too. I saw a tweet or even a conversation that came out earlier on Reddit where Dapper was doing like an EMEA, or sorry, not EMEA, an AMA about EMEA. There is just NA destroying EMEA. But yeah, the question came out. Small hint: who's the new player for LCQ? And he goes, "Expect the unexpected." That's probably for me just a troll message to figure out what's going to happen. I think Raucous probably will still be playing with this team. Unless something crazy happens and they're able to pick up a free agent, because let's think about it. There's a lot of teams that are not playing any more Valorant for the rest of the year, and potentially maybe even ever at the tier 1 with franchising, right? So
yeah.
there's a pool of players available, and Sentinels does have the money to do buyouts. So if they could pick up somebody crazy for LCQ, then I will definitely expect the unexpected. I think that'll be kind of cool for in that aspect.
I love whenever anything happens, like a bunch of NA players just tweet, "Oh man, that's crazy," and I'd say like 1% of them actually fucking know what's going on. I'm like, oh, you're ridiculous. All right, so after the break, we're gonna dive a little bit deeper and talk about game changes. We've got Autumn from Dark Monkeys coming on the show. It's gonna be great to chat with them about how the run so far, how they're feeling, of course, after making it into playoffs for Series 2. So don't go too far. This is Valoranting. We'll be back with that interview after the break. If you're enjoying Valoranting, feel free to follow us on our other socials. We're over at Twitter at Valoranting, and of course, every Tuesday, 11 a.m. PT, we're live on twitch.tv/DNP. Welcome back, everybody, to Valoranting. It's my favorite part of the show here. We get all of the news off the top out the way, you know what I mean? And we get to dive a little bit deeper and catch up with... Sorry, what?
Huh?
What did you say?
I said, like, you know, the first portion where you're like speed running through everything. You're like, ah, yeah, we'll just bullshit for a bit. Now it's tying into the meaty stuff, right? It's
Yeah, I
the
mean, I
meaty
literally
stuff.
said FNS was the best IGL because there's a fusion reactor inside his head. So I think it's very academic, actually. And I don't know why you're keeping that first segment, Vance, but that's fine. Okay, mate. No worries. Try and pick a fight.
I just got fired, Chad. I just got fired.
All right, but I mean, we want to talk a little bit more about Game Changers, and I think it's kind of a great time to talk about one of probably the most exciting unsigned team in Game Changers, right? Especially heading into playoffs. It's not the first time we've seen Dart Monkeys make a real run and really challenge a lot of these sort of I guess more known names in terms of roster and brand, but they've done it yet again, making it into the playoffs after a very close game against TSM X. And to help us, to tell us how all that went and talk us through the team, we got the IGL from Dart Monkeys. Autumn joining us here on the show for the first time. Autumn, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
I mean, of course. I think the Game Changers is really heating up right now. I know you guys are also having a great time sort of dethroning a lot of these teams and sending them out of the lower bracket as you have done. I kind of want to, we'll talk about the current Game Changers in a sec, but I kind of want to talk about your background a little bit because I think the first tweet on your account is you acing RMU esports. So was that about the start of your competitive Valorant career? Tell us a little bit about how this all came to be.
Yeah, that's from when I was silver. That's the start of my Valorant competitive career, if you can call it competitive. I was just like, we joined I had 4 friends and we just joined a scrim server and we were messing around. We were all like gold silver. We didn't really know what we were doing. But yeah, that was like the first ever competitive, quote unquote competitive scrim I was ever a part of. So
That's awesome. Even now that you came to get together in a bout now with Dart Monkeys, I actually even wanted to know, like, how does this team come about? Why the name Dart Monkeys, and where does the team come from? How'd you guys get together?
Bloons.
So I knew Marissa Grimoire, our controller player, from playing with her on Nerd Emoji, which was like a team that existed in GC like last year in GC Series 3, like October, and then they disbanded really quickly. But she was a good friend of mine. I met Isla, our chamber player, through some of my friends on Lycus Empire.
Yeah,
I think. And then I played on Whiteout right before Dart Monkeys, and unofficially SK was gonna be our 5th. Like she was gonna replace Sarah, who now plays for Immortals. And then Jude we met through our manager at the time of Dart Monkeys because we were looking for a 5th. Our manager, she recommended them to us. So that's how we all came to be. And then SK knew Curry Shot, our current coach, from Overwatch. And then what else? Our name came from just like the Dart Monkey from Bloons Tower Defense because we're all Bloons players, and SK had that. SK, full credit to her.
That's awesome.
Amazing name. We all love it.
Yeah. It's pretty good. I do want to ask you, we got to mention it a little bit before, but you guys have been signing up to a bunch of tournaments, which I think is a really cool thing. Besides Game Changers, you were also doing Game Changers Academy, you were doing the Astro Clash, a bunch of tournaments that you can sign up to. So what is the objective going through each one of those tournaments? We know that a team like Cloud9, they're always praising teams that actually want to go and get the tournament experience. Is that kind of the path that you're following as well?
Yeah. Everyone just wants to be the best players that we can be and the best team that we can be. And we figure the more experience we get, the less nerves we get, the more comfy we get playing, and just also more reps help us learn more. There's a ton to learn and grow from every single event, and every single event we're improving. So
now you sort of gave an interview for Run It Back where you sort of spoke about the impact of the Valorant's community. I think there are probably a bunch of people maybe not too familiar with it, but you sort of credited that influence as a part of sort of what helped you advance as a player in your career. So I'm curious to hear you sort of speak more to that, because I know it's been a community that's been around for a little while, but tell us a little bit about your time there and how that sort of had you propelled forward in your career.
Yeah, it's a super amazing community. Everyone there is really kind and like patient and willing to teach you things. So I didn't know anything about the competitive scene. Like my background is as a TCG player. Like
Mm-hmm.
so it was just really nice to have a community where I could learn and grow without like the judgment or harassment of like of just like I don't know. Men can be pretty mean and ranked, but
Yeah.
Sure.
just like a place where you can feel safe to learn. They have amazing learning programs there for people who are in lower elos to like get their feet off the ground and just like familiarize themselves with competitive format, which I think has a lot of value to it. So that way, when they like acquire the skills, they know how to conduct themselves as more so professionals, and they like as well have a little bit of playing experience.
Yeah. No, definitely. I got to give Valorant a big shout out to how they developed the scene to even help out for Game Changers. Because if I remember correctly, too, like I even had like some moments where I was able to hop into like the Valorant's Discord to like even do like conversations with aspiring observers and casters. So it's not just only on with players that want to learn the game. So it's a lot about like a really good uplifting community within the Valorant scene itself. So big shout out to them to be able to do that for us. And to continue what you were saying here, Autumn, because you were mentioning how it was like an inclusive space and whatnot. Was that the main thing that brought you within, that gave you the interest to compete into Valorant before actually just discovering Valorant, or what drew you to want to play Valorant?
Okay. Do you know like offline TV? I
Yes, I
watched
do.
Lily Pichu play Valorant, and I had never played an FPS before, and I'm like, they look like they're having fun. I want to do that, and I started, and I was like iron, and I sucked at the game, and then like I did it for for fun for a little bit, and then
Yeah.
I watched the like for the Women's Summer Showdown where like
Mhm.
Magical
Yes.
now C9 White played, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that is awesome. I want to do that. So then I just have been grinding since then.
So yeah, I actually had the privilege as well to cast two of the offline TV charity tournaments with DDK, when you got to cast the Pokies and the Saikuno, the Michael Reeves, and this guy's Toast. It's actually a very, very wholesome group. And also when you're speaking about the inclusivity, I can't even speak it, but how everybody gets together within the community in Galorants, offline TV within their community does the same thing, and it's very uplifting as well. So that's really cool to see.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
it's a big jump, actually. I mean, as an avid TCG player myself, I can confirm that it's nothing like playing FPS competitively. First of all,
Yeah.
you're playing on your own. So much about it is very different. And then you're moving to sort of a team context is vastly different. Tell us a bit about how that came about for you, or how it felt. What was the hardest thing about transitioning from being like a TCG player to like now, a FPS attack shooter player?
Well, there are a lot of hard things. Teamwork, obviously, among the highest. Mechanics is up there. Uh, but a lot of the things carry over because I don't know. A lot of it's just a mindset for improving more so than like the actual skills that you have.
Yeah.
It's just like willing to do anything to get better at something. But so that's helped me a lot. Like I was really good at Pokemon TCG. So um just carrying over that mental, but mechanics were really hard for me. I had to grind a ton of aim trainers, and I still do. It's one of the things I struggle with a lot. Teamwork, communication, things that just aren't built on at all.
Yep.
Yeah.
But as far as like reviewing your play and like learning strategy, a lot of that is familiar to me. So more translates than you would probably think.
Okay. The student's
Mhm.
mentality, I think, definitely is probably one of the most important ones, especially when you're trying to, adopt a new skill and also bring in those mechanics, because it's not like you transition from a different FPS game. You've gone straight into one of the most mechanically intensive shooter games that exists. So it's a huge jump.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, go ahead,
also
Dan.
just asking a little bit more about the way that the team is working together, because you guys have been now together for a bit, and now what do you think has been the evolution from the first Game Changers to now? Because you do look stronger. I mean, going and looking at that match against TSM, you guys look pretty solid. So what do you think is kind of the biggest improvement that you had since before, including, like you mentioned, all the tournaments that you've been part of, all the learning process that you mentioned you guys been going through as well?
Um, our practices have gotten a lot more efficient. We've what else? We learned how to like learn as a team together, if that makes sense. At the start, it can be hard because you don't know like what works and what doesn't, and you're trying to figure things out like together. And also like not everyone's entirely like comfortable with everyone yet. I think the biggest thing that's changed is like environment. We're all really comfortable around each other. We all know that like if we're critiquing each other, it's not an attack on each other's persons. Like my teammates are all amazing, and um all of us are just willing to do anything to be the best versions of ourselves. And so yeah, culture shifts. Um and more effective practice is probably the two biggest things that have changed since that first Game Changer series.
How did you end up becoming an IGL, right? Because it's such a unique role in FPS, right? And it requires a significant amount of mental bandwidth. Excuse me. How'd that come about? Was it just like you fell into it? Was it a conscious decision? How much of your skill set already do you feel translates into that role? Because we talk about it all the time. It's like one of the hardest things to do, and also one of the roles that people, especially in North America, in the NA region, are less sort of likely to step into because of the responsibility that comes along with it.
When I started playing, I didn't want to do it, but like the first team I was on was like a plat team, and they like auto my GL, and I'm like, okay. And then I just like kept doing it. I found a passion for it. I really enjoy IGLing. I was a huge Mel fan, and I still am. I'm a massive Mel fan. But yeah, no.
That's awesome.
She was kind of my inspiration for that, and I also had a little bit of encouragement from teammates to do it.
Yeah. That Mel is definitely a person to look up to for sure within the scene of Game Changers itself. Either you're from NA Europe or anybody else, I think, no pun intended, but the magical run has been something that's been inspiring a lot of the competitors in Game Changers today. And now I love how the scene's developing into like, is it going to be C9 White, or is it going to be G2 goes in, or is it going to be Team Liquid out in Brazil, right? So I love that they were able to set that threshold and to continue to grow the competition. And when we talk about trying to grow the competition, and you as well having to learn a lot and watch a lot of VODs here, Autumn, to be able to come out with these IGL ideas. I'm just looking through your comps, and I noticed that you could pull some inspiration left and right. And I see, for example, like the Ghost comp on Haven. I see some Fade being introduced going into the latest agent being added into the game. So do you actually get inspiration from specific certain specific teams within the VCT stage, or different regions? Who do you actually look up to usually in terms of getting those strats in?
Sometimes it's from specific teams, sometimes it's our own ideas. As a team, we all watch VODs. Our coach has pretty good analyses of like what we'd be good on as well. So like we all present ideas, we try it out in scrimmages, see what's like the most comfortable with us, what we think has the highest skill ceiling, like composition wise, and like what probably has longevity and like isn't like gimmicky. So we work with those things in mind, and we just practice it together. We'll move things around if stuff isn't working, or we're not really comfortable on it. But
Yeah.
Yeah, we do take some inspiration from pro teams.
Actually, you mentioned that there are some things that comes out from yourself, your coach, and the team. Just in general, then what's your take on their current meta? What are like the strengths that currently exist within the meta, and maybe some of even of the weaknesses? I know that we could probably go on for hours, but like what's the biggest thing, the biggest thing that you see?
Fade, Raise, Breach is pretty strong right now. Like on a lot of maps, just the util synergy is really strong, right? Like you can zone areas really well. You can trap people into areas and get like util kills with the Raise nade. As far as like opinions on the meta, I think it's a good meta. I don't know. It's like any other meta.
Yeah,
it's just meta.
I like nerding on that stuff just like you, because as you mentioned, those three agents being like a Silver Breach and a Fade, then there's a lot of like these trap plays and synergy based off abilities, right? And not just like back in when the game first came out and it's double duelist and just run it down when the only thing that could stop you are Cypher trips or whatnot, until Astra started coming out. And I think we started seeing a little bit more of that nerdiness come out within the game, and that's the kind of shit that I like to see.
Yeah.
And just to kind of understand the background of the team better, I know you said a lot of you knew each other from before, or that is kind of how the team was formed, but what happens besides practice? Because I pretty much only want to ask if you guys play Bloons on your free time. But it's more like how, because your team, they look so fun. The logo itself, everything about this entire team looks really great. So how is kind of that connection outside of the game for you?
Yeah, my teammates are my closest friends in the whole world, and there's like no
Awesome.
question about any of that. We play Bloons together, we play ranked together, we hang out
Yes.
outside of practice. Yeah, no, they're amazing. I love all of them.
So
in terms, it's like, no, we all hate each other totally.
Yeah, absolutely. We all hate each other. We we would be doing this for 5 months consecutively without paychecks if we hated each other, probably.
That's awesome.
Tell us a little bit about this. You're running the latest Game Changers, right? I think you run into TSM X in that sort of upper bracket game, and you destroy them on Fracture. Absolutely dominate. The next couple of maps are really close. Bit of a heartbreaker to sort of go down the lower bracket. So tell us a little bit about. Can you give us like a rough timeline about how that series sort of went for your team? Because I think everyone was expecting, okay, they might have wrapped this one up in two, but didn't quite go that way.
Well, we had eliminated them from Astral in the week prior. We were feeling really confident, especially after the Fracture map. We were feeling a bit confident. We made some silly, goofy mistakes in the latter two maps, and we have an opportunity to redeem ourselves in the next. I don't want to go too much into like what we did wrong, obviously, but we did some silly, goofy slip ups, and I can promise it won't happen again. We learned, we grew, and like we'll come back stronger.
You prefer to match up against them again, or was there another team in that top 8 that you have your eyes on as well?
We were all happy to see the rematch.
Yeah, sure. That's awesome. Actually, even based on that, because now we just brushed upon the games versus TSM. We also mentioned maybe the rematch from like Sakura Cup and the Game Changers Academy. I want to know like your takes on the current format of or the different formats actually that you were able to play against, right? Because you have the GSL format for the Sakura Cup. Now you have the Swiss format going into playoffs for Game Changers. Is the current format that we have for Game Changers Series 2 competitive enough? Is it good? Is it a good format?
There's a lot of best of ones, right? You guys are best of one up until the upper quarters.
It would be good if after Swiss everything was BO3, like if the whole tourney was BO3 and the seeding was more accurate. It's hard for GC. There are like 3 events in a year that teams play in, so you can't really gauge. So you're going based on like prior GC results. But as you can see, like I don't want to like call anyone out, but some teams were seeded a bit higher than they probably deserved, and that messed up some of the brackets. Some of the teams had a lot easier runs than other teams, like to qual. So I don't necessarily think that top 8 is indicative of the top 8 game changer teams currently. In this event.
Yep.
But I think the format would be fine. I think everything should be a BO3, but I also understand like there's time frames for these tourneys and sometimes it doesn't make sense. And the uppers games aren't even a limb game, so it's kind of I understand the rationale as to why they would be a BO1 as well.
Well, speaking of BO1s, even the Swiss stage has a BO1 as an opener, and everything else being BO3s, right? So, was that a little bit? Did that throw off like the community off guard in terms of like how the match was being played, or was that pretty much standard now?
For us, it didn't. The first 2 teams didn't really give us much trouble, but
Okay.
I could see how it could if you had like a tough opponent in like your 1-0 round after winning the first game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But because there's 48 teams, like the teams that are expected to win should win if
Okay.
they're like doing their job and prepping properly.
Should be very
Yeah.
familiar to you as a TCG player anyway. This
Yeah,
Swiss format, right?
I like the Swiss format, so
In TCGs, what happens is sometimes if you go 0-1, you end up in a pool of people playing like off meta decks and stuff like that, and it gets really
it's
funky.
scary. It's
Yeah.
scary.
It's called the losers, man.
Adam, you
don't wanna
just
get there.
you just got Mitch sorry about fucking Magic the Gathering and what is it? Bloodborne,
I'm
Blood
a
and Sweat
Flesh
and
and Blood
Tears?
player.
Yeah.
But I played Pokemon TCG for a while as well during the Pikachu Zekrom era, so it wasn't that long ago.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, every deck was like, how do I stick as much fucking energy in my Pokemon as I can? That's Pokemon TCG basically. Just frostmoth your shit to pieces. I kind of want to know a little bit about, what we talked a little bit about like the premise of Dart Monkeys, right? And like how you guys came together. Have you guys thought much ahead of what's going on after Game Changers, right? Because you're also a team that's signing up for a ton of stuff. So win or lose in Game Changers, like what are the next few months looking like for your team, and what is like the overall goal? Let's say like for 2022, like what do you really want to achieve this year going forward?
It would be nice to qualify for the global N. We're kind of behind on our start just because we got 7th, 8th in the first open, and there's only 2 NA spots. We're playing in Astral in August, but like as far as goals go, we're not really setting any goals of like results oriented goals. We're just trying to be the best versions of ourselves. So every single day, if we can be 1% better than we were the day prior, that is our goal. And over time, the results will come with that, and we can grow into becoming the best Game Changers team or whatever over time, if that is like what our eyes are set on. But yeah, no, right now we're just focused on internal improvement. We're gonna play in everything for tourney experience. We're gonna practice every day.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We're just gonna keep grinding.
On that's awesome because you keep practicing and you're making heads turn, which is great too. That said, though, I think looking at the qualifiers of when y'all played into Game Changers Series 1 and then now Game Changers Series 2, it's a minimum of top 8 in both so far. But unfortunately, up to this date, you still haven't been signed. So has that been like something that's been lingering behind your mind as a team, and that's been difficult?
I mean,
and
you did hint at the
right?
5 months without paychecks thing.
Exactly. So is that something that's stressing out the team a bit?
Not really.
That's good.
We have an amazing agency representing us. We know
Awesome.
that we're capable of like being signed. We've proven time and time again we are on these teams' levels and can compete with them. It's just time, and
I believe that
like
as well.
none of us are antsy about it either. We're just gonna continue growing and being the best players. We're not in it for the money.
Yeah, I think
that's a 2002 mentality back. We're not in it for the money. We're in for the glory, and that's what
absolutely.
I love.
Yeah, I mean, I really recommend that mindset as well to anyone that's trying to, especially in esports, right? Whether it's like caster or player or anything like that, I think it's a really good way to sort of start approaching it. I'm excited. I mean, you can definitely hear I can definitely hear you guys are like in the middle of quite a grind here. So thanks so much for giving us some time, Autumn, to sort of pick your brain about the team, the past, and the future. It's been great to have you on the show, and good luck in the playoffs for Game Changers.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
No worries. Hopefully, we'll catch up with you after a successful campaign again. Thanks for joining us, Autumn. Now, Quick shout out as well to Twitch. That's right, twitch.tv, the very platform you're watching us on. Can you believe these guys, giving us money to do this show? Thanks so much for Twitch, without whom this would not be possible. So big up to homies out of Twitch. Let's fucking go.
I'm so
Fuck
rich
YouTube.
now.
Twitch is the way. It's the future. All right. Don't bother with that red play button, that square. No. Stay here in the purple army, fam. Thank you very much, Twitch. We'll be back after the break. We're going to talk about Copenhagen. I think it's time, right? We're going to do a bit of a preview. We're bringing back one of the most enigmatic Valorant personalities we've ever seen. Been hard to keep tabs on this guy over the last couple months. Going to bring him back. Going to grill him, see what he thinks about these teams heading to GameChangers. Don't go too far. We'll be back with the venerable Ryan Central after this.
If you've enjoyed the show, please like and subscribe, and make sure you hit the bell for the future noties, but also comment below with what you'd like to see in our future shows.
Masters Copenhagen is almost upon us. Weeks and weeks of baseless speculation in order to fill episodes of Valoranting, and finally it's going to get paid off. Again, a lot of excitement being built up for this event, which, you know, we've had Seth on to talk about his region. Obviously, we've spoken with Dan about LATAM and how Brazil are looking. We've had a lot of insights sort of come from around the world on how people expect their regions to be doing. But trying to bring in one of the wrinkliest brains I know. It's his birthday. Everybody make some noise for Ryan motherfucking Central. Let's go.
That's like the second time I've had like a birthday joke this year. It's been nice to get away from that. I think
Only
more
2
than
instead of
anything.
150? Nice.
Yeah, you got to take it easy when you're 212. So yeah.
Ryan, what is up, man? Obviously, haven't seen you in a bit, mate. How's things?
Yeah, it's been good. Been easing back into doing EMEA, LCQs on the horizon as well, work-wise. So it's just a genuine chance to like enjoy Copenhagen, actually physically there as well. So I don't need to deal with the stress and the bullshit of prepping for an event. I could just go and watch it and have a chill time and see everybody anyway. So I think I'm the reason why Mitch isn't on today as well, because I keep team flashing him when we're playing in 5-stack. So I think he's probably spoken to Mark and to the others at BMT to make sure that we're never on a podcast again.
Right. Because I would
So
suggest that most of his analysis comes as a result of being blind. So it never really stopped him before.
At
Yeah,
least he
his eyes
predicted
don't work,
NA,
but
right?
His mouth clearly fucking does. So yeah,
he
that's
predicted
it.
NA for Masters, so you got something right. At least 50%. But then I kind of get the flashing part too, because I have the same issue with Flat Chat boys. Maybe that's why I'm also here doing this podcast and they're traveling, because I just flash boys too much in
Oh,
Masters.
You're
I
playing
see.
KO as well for the Boomer team, so
Yeah, exactly.
you're in a position where I do the same. If the others are whining about me team flashing them, I try and do it more. Like, I'm like, Tom, look at me, just underhand flashing his face.
Yeah. Guiding Light has a mind of its own. It was supposed to
Yep.
come back with a sprig of olive to tell me that we were close to land. Instead, I just flashed you. Well, unlucky. I guess we've capsized the arc. Unlucky, boys. Let's talk about Copenhagen here and our group setup, right? Because we have one of our groups is fucked. Oh my god. Obviously, again,
Always
four
a
teams.
thing.
We have
Always
4
a
teams.
thing.
Say it.
It's always a fucking thing, isn't it, with groups? Like, it's
Yep.
just there's always some lean one way or the other, and something to complain about. Which you
Mhm.
know, usually Riot change it up now and again, but I don't think so this time.
Yeah, no, I think they're gonna stick to this.
Hey, look, at least OpTic and Xerxia are not in the same group.
Oof, man. Yeah, God, they got out of that group fucking battered and bruised last
To
time.
join this one against Guild, Loud, and Crew.
Yeah, so this seems kind of insane, right?
Yeah.
Obviously,
just a little, just a little insane.
obviously, OpTic and Guild going head. This is what happens when OpTic get the 2nd seed. We keep forgetting that, right? They are not the top seed in their region, so they get unleashed on the rest of the world. This kind of messed up. I mean, Group B worth a look as well. Fun plus Phoenix, Xerxia, DRX, Northeption. This is an interesting one to me. I don't know what you guys think about it.
Yeah, I think it's more on who's going to be able to qualify out of like Xerxia, DRX, and Northeption. Because unfortunately, with Fun Plus Phoenix, there's still the issue of what's the actual roster, who's the actual roster that's going to be playing for FPX in Copenhagen. And even just a couple of minutes ago, I think there was a reply off an original tweet from George Geddes that was mentioning that There's now potentially still on track that Angel should be playing for FPX in Copenhagen, but they still have to replace Xiao and Sugetsu. So that's still like a big part of the core, and an insane fragger in Sugetsu that they're losing going into the brackets. So it's optimistic that Angel will attend, but it's pessimistic, or it's pessimistic to think that they'll go far.
I mean, EMEA are obviously plagued by this for obvious reasons. Looking at this group, you know, how many reasonable people are expecting FPX to? I mean, we have no fucking info, do we? I just don't feel good even talking about it because all these huge players just may not sort of be able to make it.
I do kind of dislike the take of, oh, if 2 out of 5 players are missing on a team, they shouldn't go. We should send Mech instead. And it's like, first of all, like Mech's in a similar boat, right? Like maybe they have their visas, but at this point, probably running out at the very least.
Send Liquid again and keep the team alive. It's the only way they're going to stay together.
Sliggy's like, all right, I'll go back again. Just like, it's just this like, limbo that he's constantly stuck in, just brought back to international events. But it's who else would you sort of expect to be there? Like, this isn't going to be something that is going to be just an issue now and again. Like, quite likely that FPX can go champions as well at this point, them and Fnatic. If Guild drop out, then it's going to be FPX and Fnatic making it to champions from EMEA. We're just going to keep repeating the cycle, right? So it's one of those things where, like, I want those FPX players, even if it's just fucking 2 of them, to be able to go to international events because they earned that. It's also really good at showing the talent of the scene, right? Because we know who the stand-ins are. It's Masked, who played on Hookahs, who very, you know, like VRL, Polaris, sort of bottom of the barrel in regards to the regional leagues at the moment, because so many other orgs have moved elsewhere. Looks pretty good. And Cider, who's had sort of experience for Wave and stuff like that. So these aren't gooder players as Baddy G, for example, but they might pop off and they might be able to get teams, and it just sort of shows the talent in the region. Also, FPX are very good at playing when they have stand-ins anyway. They had Ardis being out with COVID. Angel came in, played on the Jet, and they 13-0'd Fnatic in stage 1. Like, who else can do that?
Yeah, that's pretty nutty. Obviously, Baddy G's a lot busy winning VRLs, I think, over in France. He doesn't give a fuck about this situation right now. One boy be chilling. But I just think I bring them up first because they're probably the hardest team to really give any thoughts on. I don't know if you have anything, Dan, on this team, but I don't know what to expect from a team, even as good as Angel is at molding people very quickly, as we've sort of seen. I don't know what to expect from this roster.
The entire thing about the group is that you have so many questions for this team, especially, and everyone else in the entire group, because you have a little bit more of inconsistency coming for Xerxia and Northeption, where they might be able to just take advantage enough of that case with the players that they're able to bring in, but it's so difficult because it's something that they can't control. So at that point, you're looking at the group B in terms of, you know, besides DRX, you're looking at who will be able to deal with all the situations in time and address all the problems that they had in time.
Yeah. Don't know about this one. MEA obviously having to really cobble rosters together on short notice has kind of been a theme lately. It is the way it is. I want to talk about another team who, you know, if I'm thinking thematically, are propelled forward by the spirit of Monka. He's alive. But, you know, his spirit, his indelible mark has been made on this sort of team. Guild are going to Copenhagen. Big news for this organization, of course. However, the way they exited the EMEA playoffs was pretty, I mean, they looked really limp when they went out against FPX, right? I think in 2 of the maps, they only got 4 rounds. Those maps were like Fracture and Split as well. The kind of Trump maps that you really want to at least have a pocket strategy for. What do we think about this Guild team? Because we've been waiting a long time to see these guys turn up internationally, but I just want to remind people that they didn't look very good in that last game in the EMEA.
They are the EMEA X pretty much, right? Getting a lot of like 4th places for the longest of times during the EMEA qualifiers, and I think they actually had a pretty good look, a pretty strong look, and with continuous improvement going in through event to event. Now that they finally make it, though, I still find that I know I trolled to not have players like Leo on in my top 20, but I think they definitely have a great roster to be able to make some heads turn. Is it going to be a good enough roster though to face off against OpTic in round 1 where they could win? I don't think so, but I think that's the beauty of them also being able to start in groups. They won't fall into that trap of like the guard starting off in playoffs. They could learn a little bit more. They're going to be right into the moment and warmed up with everybody else when they're starting an event. Less jitters, I think, to be able to start off in groups. So we'll see if they're going to be able to make a mark. But I'm still on the NA copium for this group.
Yep, I smell gigacopium from you. They have to play against OpTic, right? In that first matchup. Jeez, that's a fucking tall order for this team. But that would be a real... I mean, it's a great conversation starter if you're still, stuck 3 years ago, obsessed about, NA versus EU. This is right where you want to be, Ryan. The box seat for the fucking two regions.
Yeah, like arguably the best team in the world versus a team that's attended its first international event. I can see it already. Just the first map goes OpTic, all those little NA erections pop up, and it's away we go, chops away for fucking Copenhagen. I will say, the way that Guild played against Mech was perfect. And Mech were playing decently in playoffs. Like, they can limp and look weak all the way through group stages, but there's just something about them that shows up when it matters. Like, these players have always shown up when it matters, I think. But for Guild, everybody played perfectly. Trex moving over to that duelist role looks a lot more impactful. Like, it suits him. He played duelist before when he was on OG and stuff like Honk. I don't think that it's too out there to say that Guild are not going to go to playoffs or get through. But I do think that people are just generally underestimating them based on the fact that they've never been at an international event before, right? That is just Loud's in that group, OpTic's in that group, there's no chance. And I don't think that's inherently fair because we have never seen this Guild team on an international event. Leo might pop off more than anybody would expect. This whole team has that potential. And to be fair, like Loud and OpTic could turn up and be under... I bear in mind that Acend won champions, right? So there's been the examples of teams being underappreciated and then coming in and taking some serious wins. So I can suspect that for Guild, but I wouldn't say it's likely.
And I think the improvement as well for Guild is I think Safe for me as well. Safe at some point went like he was known to be when they first started like a Cypher player, a KJ player, being a Sentinel player pretty much, right? And now that he's maybe like just before the patches came out with Fade coming out, he switched over to a Jet, getting a lot more duelist role in that sense. And I think now this meta like suits Guild quite well into that reason as to why they're able to make some heads turn and qualify here into Copenhagen is because now you could potentially have almost like a semi double duelist comp where Safe could still opt, could still play aggressive angles on defense, could still get information just like a Sentinel. So he's basically playing two roles in one at this point that he's been accustomed to when he first started playing Valorant. So that as a whole, I think, does help into the confidence of Guild getting into this tournament.
Okay, but I mean, still, I would not say confidence is extremely high for this team, especially based on the group they find themselves in, their first round opponent, and who awaits them in the lower part of their bracket. I mean, Vans, we had you and Mitch actually go back through the sort of the Japanese finals because his next team, I think, for many in the West are probably a little bit harder to place unless you're Nostromo in the chat and you think they're gonna butt blast everybody. But let's talk about Northeption here as a roster that I think that we saw them compete at a sick event in a pretty high pressure environment. And they looked great, right? Relatively speaking, yeah. Let's have some caveats here for this team. What do you expect from Northeption?
To be honest, it might be a hot take on my end because I think a lot of people are expecting Northeption to do quite well. I think they're gonna do okay. I think they could still put like a really good fight against DRX in the first round. I think they're very similar to DRX in a sense that it's very almost one-dimensional into like, okay, let's hit the A site. Let's just get the A site. You want to pull rotations? You want to run defaults? Doesn't really happen. DRX are really going to do anything like that? Maybe we'll default, but we're just always going to be like on a 3-2 split or on a full exec more than getting any lurks. So when it comes down to these type of like, hey, let's 1v1 duels, let's get these fights on executions, I think there are some rounds where Meteor could pop off and actually come in and frag out with the rest of the team and make it very difficult against DRX. But once you're going to start playing against potentially maybe even more strategically sound players or teams, then I think you're going to start seeing the chinks in the armor, like some gaps in the strategies and the macro here of this team. Again, just because when you watch this game against the against Zeta Division, when we actually finally had timeouts for Zeta Division and XQQ was calling out into like the one-dimensional strats of Northeption, instantly we saw a comeback from Zeta Division, and it was a very close game moving forward, at least for that map, at least for that half.
I mean,
it really comes down to, do we really think that Northeption can perform to the same level as we saw them on that grand finals? Because when you watched them before, they like to play aggressive, kind of like a paper Rex style in some scenarios of going in, but it doesn't look as planned as sometimes we see on the other side. So to me, that is the question. If they can perform to this level, you already have so many advantages, right? You know, you won against a team that made a pretty deep run for Masters 1. You played in front of a bunch of people. I don't even know how many people were in
like
that.
12,000.
16,000, I think.
Yeah. You already have that going on
Maybe
for them,
more.
so it's great. But now I just want to see that consistency. And I know Vansilli said that some people expect them to make a deep run. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen that many people say that. Maybe just some weird takes because people like the aggression, the aggressive playstyle. But I mean, is it gonna happen? I feel like there is a chance, yes, but it just depends on what they're able to get going on in this week that they have.
What do you reckon, Ryan? What do you got for me?
I haven't seen too much of Northeption. I think I saw like a half here or there. But I do think that it's kind of silly to sort of assume that Northeption is going to do what Zeta Division was able to do,
Right.
at least to an extent, what Zeta Division were able to do at Reykjavik. Yeah, you're sort of setting the expectations high on a team that know that they've got those expectations ready for them, right? So I do think it's a doable group for them to get out of playoffs. If FPX do have stand-ins, I think that's a big advantage to the DRX and Northeption being able to qualify. But I kind of see him in the same way of like Xerxia, where they could bottom out. They could just completely like falter in areas where you sort of expect them to do relatively well, especially in the group stages for Xerxia last time. But for Northeption, you can just overdo it, really. It's like magic is best when you don't expect it. So the fact that people are expecting this kind of thing to happen is a little bit out there, really. It's kind of like me saying that like Guild could make sort of playoffs and that kind of thing. It's just a little bit too much. I'd love to see it, but I think that when a team comes into a tournament like this, just a step at a time. Also, you got to bear in mind, like
they're a victim of edginess.
Confirmed for champions, right? So
yeah,
there is an element of like Northeption need to do very well for it to be worthwhile for them to get enough points that they overtake Zeta for playoffs, right?
Yeah, sure. I feel like people love the Japanese region. They want to predict them to win. For example, Nostromo will get an apology from everybody on the show if they make top 2. Or I'm going to ban him so fucking
happy to be
hard.
wrong, but
yeah, me too. I'm also really happy.
It's like
to ban
everybody's
the guys,
going to have like a magical like golden road journey. Just like that's not how it works. We kind of like the winners of Copenhagen, Xerxia, DRX.
These people watching
Guild.
too much fucking anime, dude.
Team Liquid are there again. They win as well. Everybody's a winner. It's there has to be losers, and I don't think this is Northeption's tournament with all of the teams coming in with a point to prove. Even fucking OpTic, they won the last event, right? And now that they have to go through groups, they're going to be fighting for that spot again.
Yep. But it's a win-win. If they do make it, that's such a sick story. If they don't, well, we didn't really expect them to at the same time. It's the beauty of these international sort of tournaments. And hey, they're an underdog, play with house money to a degree, but nothing that you guys have said makes me feel like they're going to be able to contend against these more established teams who have more reps under their belt, who have more experience playing internationally. So something just to bear in mind if you're trying to put a pick and bracket together out there.
At least they have the fan buff, right? They are able to play in front of like 16,000 people. If they can actually make it up to the top 3 or that weekend, the crowd's only like what 2,000 in Copenhagen. So you know,
if Northeption are in those games where there's an audience, I'll buy a fucking jersey and I'll be their #1 fan. I swear. that's sort of what I'm expecting, right? Especially if there's no EMEA teams and it's all. Like
I want to see that shit, Ryan. I want to see the fucking crane camera going through the fucking crowd, and then that's you standing up with the
I just
Northeption
think
jersey.
Ryan as an optimist in any way, shape, or form is a fucking incredible cameo. You know, I'm ready for that.
Especially when it's almost ironically doing it, but
yes,
dedicated to the craft anyway.
Yeah. Hey, don't worry. Yeah, I mean, look, I think it's gonna be a lot of fun to see them compete, but again, they need to get to that crowd stage, right? It's a pretty good point. There's some games that they need to get through on their way. Let's talk LATAM. Let's talk Brazil. Now, Crew really left a pretty strong mark on all of us, and then they went to Reykjavik, and then maybe we started to realize, okay, look, you know, this team obviously still has work to do. They had an incredible run, but reality bites sometimes. This Crew team, though, obviously they came through from the LCQ, pretty convincing victory against NIP, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, devastating loss for them here against Leviatan. But what should we be expecting from a team that has, in the past, shocked the world's very best to their core?
They are back at looking strong and looking like a dominant team, and that's what I said. If you really want to, I want to not bite into the hopium again, but I feel like it's just meant to happen because this team, I mean, they've been looking solid. I know one of the things that I think it was Messina who tweeted that they I'm not saying this is true, by the way, but they said that they intentionally lost the grand final so they could guarantee 2 spots for Latin America because they knew they could win against NIP. And now this also, clearly, I'm not saying this is true. I'm just saying what they said. I'm just repeating what has been said. The reason why I believe and why I have them even potentially upsetting Loud is because when these teams are practicing, Crew, Leviatan, Loud, NIP, when these teams are going against each other, the way that they practice is scrimming each other. So the level, and this is something that it was Klaus who said in the interview for Last Chance Qualifier, he said that the level for Brazil and Latin America South at least is at the same level because they're always practicing and they have the confidence of reading the enemy. Again, Crew has also never lost against Brazil. It continues that streak. It continues to be with the same amount of confidence. So they're looking better. They're really praising the new coaches that they got. Leaso, who was a coach for 90 or 9Z, and now they got this new coach. They got the old analyst, and they're really praising. They're really saying how good it is. They have some really cool bonus rounds. They have some really good eco rounds as well that they want to implement. So I'm just saying, like, everything is looking like they can at least make it out of groups. I don't know, going against OpTic, I feel like it would be a little bit more difficult, but everyone else, I do feel like they can definitely beat Guild and Loud potentially as well.
I'm gonna need a little bit more convincing than that, to be honest. I don't know. I didn't watch the Crew and NIP game, but the Crew and Leviatan was I don't know. I think that.
But you watch the ones before.
Yeah.
The
Remember
other
Dan
two,
said that
and
one
then
is not really
you'll see
indicative,
it.
yeah.
I mean, it's still a game that if it was still a game that was qualifying for Masters, so I'm pretty sure you still had to play to your best capabilities, right?
It's not assuming that yeah, I think the assumption is not that they threw, but they were uncharacteristically underperforming in that series.
So
they were fucking doing like
that is
10
what I'm
rounds
saying.
down in a row against Crew in that Leviatan in that last map, man. Tragic.
It was 2 things that day. One, there were a lot of tech issues, and for some reason, I feel like it has to do with the mental of Crew that people always say is not the greatest. But every time there's tech issues or something that Crew cannot control, they lose. And we saw in Masters, we saw it before. Every single time there's an external issue, is a Crew that's losing. So as long I really feel like as long as that's not happening, they have all the confidence to win that first, second match potentially and see how far they're able to make it. But again, and the thing that drives me insane is people saying Crew, I don't know, they're not looking that good. And it's like, they've been looking incredibly good, incredibly consistent, even more than before. And the scores that you see from them, the composition changes as well. Now they're playing Neon with Kesnida Neon, with Naxted as well, now on the Chamber, who is the issue that I had before because he was looking kind of inconsistent with Jet. But now he's on the Chamber permanently, looks even better than Takolija, which was another...
I'm the opposite, though. Because
No.
I actually see Nags on Chamber, and I think that it actually slows down how Crew used to play. Because when you actually had Nags, and then you also had Kesnit playing the double duelist, then they could just start actually getting a lot more value when Nags decide to just hold W with Kesnit and then actually get those trades and create the space for the team. Now that he's playing a chamber, he's actually limited as to how aggressive he could play, and I think that actually adds a little bit of a gap into the rest of the playstyle of Crew. And if you're looking at Crew in general from last year, let's say in 2021, you would say, okay, I could probably put, Kesnit into the top 20. I could put Klaus into the top 20. Maybe even Zeek into the top 20 because he had some great moments as well in 2021. But now you're going against, for example, Loud, head-to-head against Aspas. Who would probably take it? Probably Aspas. Les even got better. Les is actually a player that plays a chamber that actually looks pretty good, much better than he did on Cypher now. That is a positive out there too. Sadak, can you actually play better than Sadak? And then you're going head-to-head against OpTic. Are you better than OpTic mechanically? I don't see this for Crew.
Okay. Let's stay within this region. We're gonna rehash. I know there were more chances for this Croupium. This is fine. Listen, we expect this from our sort of regional specialists. I mean, the only thing, Dryad, that separates you and Seth right now is that you don't have a bottle of soju in your hand or whatever is the liquor from that area. You also haven't called anyone a limp dick fuck up yet. So, but outside of that, this is where we are now.
Because we were at Champions when he sent that, and he was so proud of it. He was like, I sent this thing to Valorantin, and I just went off. I don't remember what I said, but I just was talking until I was red in the face for a minute. Well, I definitely said this. And I was like, I'll keep an eye out for it.
Yeah, definitely. Iconic moment for sure. So, Leviatan are the top seed from the combined LATAM and Brazilian region, as we have named them, just because of how their format works. We won't see them. So Dry's going to give us a cliff notes here because we've already talked about it. Again, for those that are just coming in, joining the show now, wondering, like, what would you say, I guess, if someone asked you whether this team's a real deal, Dryad?
Sorry. Is that Leviatan walking onto the stage with the Chinese dragon from that's fucking awesome.
Is their mascot there?
That's awesome.
Leviatan,
it does look like a Chinese dragon, but I mean, look at their logo.
Yeah.
It's a fucking
No, of course. I just think that it's fucking awesome that he walked in with that.
I can't believe Vance was about to accuse him of cultural appropriation.
Of course not. Of course not. I just thought it was fucking dope that they're walking in with like a snake dragon, man.
Anyway, snakes aside, when we've talked about this sort of walkout.
These guys were more coordinating than Crew were in that finals, to be fair. Jesus.
All right, give us the DL on Leviatan. What we should expect of this young team.
I think you can expect potentially some upsets because when you look at, and we talked about it before, but when you look at the playoffs teams, the ones that are going to make it, you look at Fnatic, you look at Xerxia, you look at PaperX, and then you look at them. It seems like everyone is thinking that Leviatan can be the weakest out of all four, and in a way, I feel like, yes, it does make sense, but I wouldn't be surprised if they make a deep run, like a deeper run than people are expecting. This is a team that, as long as you put Tekalija in those positions, as long as you support him in the way that he wants to, and as long as you can have King being a little bit more consistent, they have something to prove. They're insane mechanically, and they have some, again, the great coaches that they stole. I want to say stole, but they got from Crew. So you have that going on for them, but I am concerned because I wish they would play since the group stage. I feel like they need that practice. They don't have international experience. A lot of these players are very young, and if they're taken down right away, I feel like that would be why. It wouldn't really be in terms of the meta that they're playing, this play style that they have, because I feel like overall it's good enough to where they are.
Yep. Okay. This, by the way, this is the kind of segment we could do an entire episode on. So we're going to move pretty quickly in between these. Why, Dan, do you think that Loud could actually lose to Crew? Obviously, I think a lot of people see Loud and how far they went last time in Reykjavik. They probably think that was a hot take.
Yeah, for sure. And I love Loud. I love Aspas. I love Les. I feel like they got the chance to prove themselves, and I think it's great. But I feel like people do not realize that same level is being matched maybe behind the scenes by Crew by Leviatan in some cases, but mostly by crew. They're
Mhm.
able to match up the same level of playstyle, and when you think about Aspas, you think about the insane mechanics and how good he is at his role. And I feel like Kesnet is able to do the same and is able to make an actually a banger match to watch. So when they have the practice going on, when they're always playing against each other, there's no way you're expecting crew to be way less. At least, it's going to be a close match, and it can really go for any of them, but you can't just count crew out because you haven't seen too much of them before.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this speaks more to the development of the entire region than
Yeah.
than maybe just them being off the boil, which is great, which is kind of what we were asking for, right? Because let's think back to like the first time we saw Brazil at an international event, and like Vikings were like, what is a post plant meta? What is a Viper? And they had to try and
Mhm.
adapt like halfway
What
through.
is an Astra?
Right. So we're much further down the sort of the evolutionary trail than that. Fans, do you think OpTic are gonna win Masters? You're an NA fanboy. Think's kind of a safe
No.
guess. No, this team. Okay, why?
The competition's way better than it was in Masters 1. I'm actually quite happy at least that we get into a group potential that are at least into a bracket where OpTic will be able to play. Actually, they're playing the MEA team from the get-go. I think that's a great test, and it's even better that if they win against Guild, it's going to be high copium and be like, oh, see, OpTic can actually beat EMEA, but then every EMEA fan is going to put an asterisk to say, oh, but it's just Guild, our fourth strongest team in the MEA. They'd get shit on in Fnatic, blah, blah, blah. I still think that they'll do just fine. They could get definitely a deep run across the board. They have a great roster. And I'm one of those people that actually put Victor very, very high in my top 20, where people might think I'm off the goop. And I think that he's able to do quite well in this new type of strategy that's being implemented both by FNS and by Chet. Any role that he's necessitated to play, he's actually doing it. And look at the roles he's playing. He's playing Neon. He's playing fucking KO. He's trying to create space for the team. And when he actually has to play a duelist, for example, a Jet on Breeze, he's fucking killing it. So I think that overall, he's one of those best flexible players that we currently have at Masters that actually would be one of the winning conditions that allows OpTic to go into a deep run. But for the reason why I say OpTic is not going to be able to win or may not win Masters 2 is just because the competition is so high going into this event right now. I think that it's going to be a tough run. I'd love to see it because I'd love to see a back-to-back and the first time that being done by an NA team. But Loud wants to rematch. Xerxia, PRX, DRX, everybody wants the revenge against the North American team. I think OpTic is like the new Sentinels of 2022 that they're the team to beat. So everybody's going to be looking at them.
Ryan, you think they're going to get out of groups at least, right? Copium?
There are 3 reasons why I think OpTic's going to win Copenhagen. Actually, the first is that they lost 2 series at Reykjavik and still won the tournament.
Yep.
There's not many teams that are able to do that. The second is like the way that OpTic adjust constantly with their comps and their ideas and their set plays. They know how easy it is to read into teams. You've got so many websites now that can literally break down every default that they do. I think it's one of the reasons why OpTic constantly change up what agents they're playing, what comps. Even if they're winning on a map, they still want to change stuff up. I do think that they were a little bit easy to read for Xset in the final, but that obviously, if they all had COVID and stuff, that it's going to have an impact, right? And Xset are very for a team to be able to beat stuff like that. But they're kind of like the main 2. Like OpTic could just lose to Guild, but I still have faith in them to like bounce back. And if there's a rematch against Guild later on, in the same way that they had against Xerxia and in the same way that they had against Loud, they have that ability to pull themselves back from the brink where a lot of teams really start to falter. And I think that's kind of like a big difference at this stage where people are expecting a lot from Loud, people are expecting a lot from Xset. There are a lot of teams coming into this, like Leviatan, Guild, no doubt Northeption, that are going to go in sort of guns blazing. Like, they're not going to be too panicked about what's going on. That I think OpTic are like, all right, we lost to these guys. They're cringe. We're going to come back and beat them the next time that we play them. Whereas other teams might completely fall off, much like the Guard did. I don't think it was inexperience. I think it was just such a short time to adjust to teams overall that made it very difficult to play on an international event in that way.
I love this because this is something that I observed during last Masters is that OpTic never lose to the same team twice in a row, right? Every time they're lost, they bounce back in like a really, crazy because, Chet is the kind of person that, I think his demeanor makes it a little easier to underestimate him because he's very low key, low energy. Like he's not cocky. He's not, he doesn't exactly employ an extended vocabulary. You know what I mean? So people don't exactly, expect this, but that team was unreal how they're able to bounce back every time they'd lost. They'd lose and everyone was like, what the fuck is this team is, and then they turn around
can't
and they
read
have
that
it
stuff and run it back, like you can't categorize that kind of that play. And it's a lot of experience on that team too, more so than I think any other team on a LAN stage and internationally for sure.
Vans, I could kiss you. We just got that fantastic sync on the L ratio in chat. That wasn't discussed earlier on. That's why we're meant to be co-casters. You know what I mean? If I move to Valorant, I'll take you, bro. Sorry,
Stop
Riv.
talking
Get
shit
fucked,
about
mate.
Riot so we can actually get a fucking cast together again.
Anyway, someone with actual insight. I cut you off, Dryad. Yeah, what you going to add to the OpTic narrative?
I was just gonna say, in the international stage, at least for Masters 1, like you said, Mitch, they don't lose rematches. They didn't lose against Xerxia. In a way, they didn't lose against Guard when they actually got to face each other right away. And they didn't lose against Loud. So the information, and we know these players already, we know that they're incredibly consistent, and the things that Chet practices behind the scenes, I mean, it gives them their results. So I don't see a scenario where they don't make it at least to, I don't know, semifinals. It just, they have so much going on that even thinking about another scenario, even if I love and I feel like Loud and Crew are insane, especially in that group, it's an OpTic that really knows how to adjust, and it's knowing that they're playing this group stage instead of being the first seed is just playing to their strength. I remember we got the chance to talk to Chad here right after Masters 1, and he said he actually liked the group stage. It gives them more practice and it gives them more information, more actual experience that the players need. So everything just seems to be in favor of them right now.
You also can't mention, you can't talk about OpTic without talking about Ye, of course, right? Like that guy's fucking insane. Like if I remember off the top of my head, like 102 or up to 109 first bloods during the group stages in North America, or playoff stage in North America, which converted also into participating to 43% of the first bloods, where they actually were able to convert that into a win. When Ye gets a first blood, they win around 43% of the time. So that's pretty fucking
the conversion
insane.
rate is fucked up. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's
I'm pretty sure Enzo has a better conversion rate though. I think we covered that last week.
Sorry, I mean, out of all the rounds they win on 5 versus 4, Ye's 42% of those first bloods. That's what I meant by that stat. So like him being able to get that type of impact on defense and as well on offense is huge. The closest in North America, I think, were like maybe even Dicey, but they didn't qualify. But for the team that qualified as Acend, if you're looking at Cryocells and you're looking at Zekin, I think there were like 24 to 26%, both of them each. So it's insane how much value Ye brings into the firepower for OpTic.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember when we talked to MCE and said, what happened with the guard? What happened? And he was sort of like, yeah, look, obviously we had to adjust to this setting. Also, we got fucking dicked down by Jing. When they played against Paper Rex, like the insight that I got from them is that they felt helpless playing against their style. Let's talk about this team. One of the most promising rosters coming out of APAC. They're always exciting. They're always fun. Their players are very easy to get behind. Just how deep do Paper Rex run? Obviously, bear in mind, they're starting in the playoffs. So they're chilling. They watch group stage go by.
Yeah.
How deadly are these guys?
Paper Rex in group stages kind of reminds me of Dragon Ball Z, where Vegeta and Nappa come down to Earth, and you've got they just basically for fun just beat up like Krillin, kill Yamcha, and get Chaozu to blow up on them. It was kind of like that with them playing series where they're picking up the Phoenix and stuff like that. Like this team just doesn't look phased by anybody. And I think the fact that they play like this, you sort of watch them in the region and you sit and think, there's no way that Forsaken plays like this on an international stage.
And then
he did, and he absolutely fucking took everybody back. Like it's the fact that Paper Rex literally don't slow down for anybody. It's surprisingly like well thought out. Some of their executes, how they're using utility, how they can think on the fly. That adaptability again is something that you only really see from teams like OpTic, just thinking on your feet kind of thing. So, Paper X, I think that APAC region is much more intelligent than people let it on. As somebody that casted a lot of like SCA stuff in the early days, technically it was a terrible region, but the thing about it, I think Anders said this in the video as well, they take stuff from NA, they take stuff from EMEA, they take stuff from Korea. They're cherry picking the best out of all regions that suit them. So Paper X is like this amalgamation of all the aggressive teams around the world to make something that is very hard for teams to really counter unless they specifically watch every single VOD that Paper X have been doing.
Mm-hmm. And like to talk about the crazy plays, one of the examples is watching the Icebox game versus Xerxia in this best of 5, where like they even do wall boosts from Jing onto Forsaken, so you could double updraft from Orange and then get a dagger kill up on top of and towards spawn. Another one where they combine like a Fade Haunt into a Sage Wall self boost from Jing to hunt down the person that got pinged. Like, it's incredible how aggressive they are on the defense and how it still pays off and it still works from last year until today. And the good part about it too is that they're also as hyper aggressive when it comes down to the execution on their attack. That also again overwhelms a lot of these players in their set positions. Like, look at Forsaken's bind, look at PRX's bind with a Yoru in there. It's pretty fucking insane how much synergy goes into the amount of utility that they throw out. The timing that they have on everything for layer to layer to get a spike plant down, or just not allowed to get a spike plant because it's just fucking killing everybody when they get into the site anyways. Starting more and more to think that PRX might now be, they had a deep run, which is why I never really considered them a dark horse and like a favorite to win. But I think they're like the dark horse of the favorites, if that exists as a term.
If someone can take OpTic down, I would say it's Paper X because of that fast playstyle. Even though OpTic, they're also sometimes down to do that fast pace. I don't think anyone between all the teams that we have going on, no one can match Paper X in that playstyle. They just
fuck. They're good to watch.
You can't.
God,
if
Xerxia doesn't make any sense, man. It's just so good to watch.
Yeah. And if Xerxia did it twice versus OpTic already, then potentially even Paper X. But the other thing too is, as I was giving a lot of copium to Paper X, the other thing too is that if they're going to be so hyper aggressive, then teams that expect these kinds of things, that could play a default, that could play just a little bit more slower in the site to understand when a hit is going to be coming inside their spawn, then I feel that could be very easily counterable. And that's something that a team like OpTic could also be ready for too, where then Ye just stays in spawn with a fucking headhunter already half aiming in the air and it just swats Forsaken out of the air. That could definitely happen as well. So
let's move on and talk about this Xerxia team then, right? They are not the favorite team coming out of this region, but let's not forget this team was actually pretty nasty in groups, right? It's because, I think OpTic, they bounced back so much after losing to them and Xerxia obviously don't get out there. They're a dark horse team here, right? I think it's safe to say that, we're all talking about PRX and PRX are a dark horse of the favorites. So where does that put Xerxia then in the grand scheme of things?
Xerxia, like I mentioned, still potentially a dark horse. I think when you're looking at this roster, people still at least don't talk about Surf. I still find that he's an underrated duelist for this team. And Scary is actually probably one of the best controllers that currently exists in the scene. And because there's just so many players and so many good teams, and so many teams that have good personalities that get like the spotlight, that these guys are just like chilling, just like in the backstage, getting ready to get their moment on the stage as well. And once they're able to have that opportunity and have that limelight, I think they're just gonna shine and fucking dominate that stage. And I feel that this could even be one of those stages that could happen. Because, maybe even if they lost like an 0-3 versus Paper X, they still had to play a gruesome BO3 against Team Secret, who were another favorite to qualify for SCA. And they actually had a pretty good showing against that team. And after playing a BO3 against Secret, they had to play a BO5 right after against Paper X. So I think at that point, if you only watch that series and watch that game, then maybe you're underestimating Xerxia and leaving the foot off the gas because those guys are pretty gassed out. You needed a lot of mental to be able to go through 5 maps in total, 6 maps in total actually, to play in that last day. So yeah, I still expect that they're able to make a great run. Like I said, able to upset OpTic quite a few times already at the international stage. And it's nice that they're going to be able to play against somebody else too, other teams in the group stages, so that they have their moment to
They get
shine.
to ease in against this FPX, this probably like a weakened FPX team as well.
Yeah.
Ryan, I think you're like muted in Discord, by the way.
I'm just muted overall.
There you
go.
Because I made a noise when you sort of said that like they've had success over OpTic. I still think this team massively misses Paipan. Not in the sense of like Surf not performing, because he's been decent to watch. Like he seems to fit the squad mostly, but they don't play Raze or Neon or anything like that. And I think that, you know, playing Jet Chamber is fine, but there's so many maps now where teams run in those kind of like high utility, we're taking the space with a C's and nade combination. I don't think that Xerxia can work alongside that really. So unless they've been practicing a lot of Raze and are ready to sort of show that side of them, I don't expect they're going to be able to do much in groups. I just feel like they're a bit of a meta behind. And I'm not saying that like playing Jet nowadays is throwing, but it obviously depends on the map. Some maps you can play it like Acend still, but if you're heading places like Bind, if you're heading places like Split and stuff like that, I think Raze is a bit of a necessity. So lacking that is a bit of a concern for me.
Yeah. Question marks for me about this team, especially that group is
just
also
fine.
The group's up in the air because they get through FPX and then it's DRX or Northeption, right? Maybe there's a
I
wall.
only see DRX winning against them. I feel like Xerxia could make a nice run the lower bracket.
Yeah, it's like it would be maybe like a Xerxia versus Northeption. I know we're really underrating FPX here, but I just don't think it's reasonable to put them in the conversation when they've replaced 2 players. So, so like that would be a very telling game, I think, and potentially quite an exciting one. Let's talk about our top seed from North America. Traditionally, with our small sample size, not exactly the place you want to be, right? So Xset at their first international event, if I'm not mistaken, will be circumventing the group stages. It'll be playoffs for this team. Let's talk about, let's use the data from this game, right? This OpTic matchup, which was, pretty competitive, to try and set expectations for this team. What should we expect from Xset? We've already said Ryan sort of feels like there's 3 reasons why he expects OpTic to win the whole thing. So where does that put this team?
Oh, was that to me? I wasn't sure.
Oh, anyone really? Yeah, open forum.
I'd say that like Xset have such a good read on their opponents. I feel like for this series especially, they had a real torrid time on their attack, but OpTic had an even worse time on their defense. I feel like they had a good understanding of what OpTic like to do, what kind of spaces were open for them to exploit. It kind of forced OpTic to play super wishy-washy, where it's like, all right, we're going for a B split. Actually, Ye was looking on A, got a kill. We're going to instantly rotate over there, and then they just run, don't check a corner, and 3 of them die in the process. So I think Xset have a good like read and understanding, and I do think that they could be like a top 4-ish team. Like I do see like Xset OpTic being some of the top dogs there. I just kind of think that it's the opposite of OpTic. Like we don't know what's going to happen if Xset go into that first game up against a Northeption that's feeling themselves, and then suddenly they lose that series, get knocked down to the lower bracket. How do they adjust that quickly, right? So there's too many question marks for me with Xset to really feel like they're the strongest team in NA, especially when there's so many question marks around the regional final as well with OpTic.
Yeah. Still a team that has good experience though on LAN for at least 2 of the players, right? So and 2 veterans too on top of that. That's been
veterans,
helping out the young fraggers. So talking about Def and talking about Aaron, right? I think they have necessarily that veterancy that could actually help with the expectation for the other 3 players. I think I saw definitely some nice improvements into Xset as well, where maps like Ascent where even Psycho was mentioning it. I don't know if it was like at an interview during the VCTs. I think after they beat OpTic, it was like, yeah, we needed to find a way to actually make our Ascent work at some point because we couldn't find a good solution, and then decided to put Zeek in, who's supposed to be like a fragger. We always talk about Zeek and Kraus, so Zeek is like, yeah, I'll play Silva. And then they put BCJ on Smokes as Omen, and then suddenly they have the A side on lockdown between BCJ and also with Def. And BCJ, I mean, he's had experience playing controller before, has had experience playing Omen before, and you just saw like a whole different type of BCJ that played very, very confidently, where he doesn't have to stay back to dart for the rest of the team. So now it actually gives me hope that they actually have like the necessary skill set to be able to change on the fly, maybe agents and compositions last minute when they're going to start learning and about these teams that are currently competing into the VCTs for Denmark, to hopefully see something new coming out of Acend. But I like that they've had some improvements. They've finally got over that 4th place curse. Not only that, but winning NA VCTs also shows the confidence that they're going to, or gives them the confidence to say, look, not only did we break the curse, but we also won everything. So you could come out here, you come into this event very, very, very confident to be able to, again, upset some people into the big stage.
You talked at length about BCJ having a real big impact on this Acend team, but not in the flashiest sort of way, Vance. You feel like this is the kind of performance, this kind of individual that's going to be a boon to them internationally?
I actually think the opposite. I think that on Ascent, he actually had some very good flashy plays, like some very big dick swings and just getting 3Ks against opponents. I think even looking at Ascent, just looking through the stats, like when he's able to get first blood, because he was getting a lot more first bloods playing on an Omen as well on Ascent. They were able to convert that into a win. So he's also a hype man. I think you already saw that from the clips of rounds that Acend are able to win. This guy's just, and we showed it last week, he's just going to be able to rally the troops and make sure that the confidence and the level stays high. So I don't think he's, I know Nostromo's calling him overrated, but I think he's just the perfect person that you need within your composition that maybe doesn't have the international stage, but still has that confidence after listening to his interviews to be like, I don't give a fuck who we're playing, where we're going to be playing, but I know I'm going to give my 110%, 120%, and the team's going to follow me because I'm going to be like the unsung hero / leader to build that hype. Because if you look at the veterancy of Def and Aaron, yes, they have great stage experience, but are they the type of person that's going to be able to be a hype when the team wins a round? Not really. They're really quiet personalities, and it's nice to have that loud, confident personality, especially from somebody like BCJ, who you don't expect to have that type of confidence and joyous whimsy when they're winning these rounds.
Joyous whimsy. I would say as well for Xerxia real quick that, you know, a lot of people compare them to Guild. I think that Xerxia and FPX are really similar in a lot of ways. I think these are teams that are some of the most fundamentally strong teams in the world. They understand the game of what they should be doing and what their opponents are trying to do. That's kind of like the problem with teams like, I think, OpTic, for example. They're very good at like changing their comps, but some teams you can have a certain 5 agents, change them all out to 5 different agents, but at a fundamental level, play them exactly the same, putting the smokes in the same places. Instead of a recon that hitting backside, it's a Fade's Haunt, right? I think OpTic have good ideas on how to use certain agents and utility to do stuff different. So I think for Xerxia, it's they know kind of how to play. It's just whether those players can show up in the same way that we've seen from like Soigetsu for FPX, for example, or Ardis. Can they have those world-class moments in the server? Through the qualifiers, we've seen that they can, but I think on an international stage, it's a much taller order to be able to do that when you have other players in other regions looking to do the same, right? So can Xerxia pound for pound face off against these teams.
And again, that resilience that OpTic displayed is something that they might, you know, need to have as well, because being able to adapt to what gets thrown at you is probably going to be more important than just, you know, front loading all of that talent and that flashiness. So on that note, I think that's a good opportunity to talk about DRX. Does anyone have any sort of real strong sort of feelings about this team? Right. Well, we had Seth on this show to talk through it. I will point out, seemed less confident than he had in the past about this roster. But, are we leaning any which way about this roster? Because, I mean, we've got people talking. Remember this group, right? Like that they got their first match up against Northeption, and a match that you probably expect them to look pretty competitive. But is this team as rock solid as they always have been expected to be?
For their region. I think Korea still has DRX over and above everybody else, but I don't know, man. I've always given a lot of hope to DRX in the past events, and they always fell flat for me, and it was kind of disappointing, to be honest with you. You still have some players that could still pop off, but and they've tried to do a little bit of meta changes as well by pulling out like a Breach and Neon on Bind with a Fade, which was pretty decent too. But again, it's still against teams that they're just too good against. Yep. I don't know if they're going to be able to do this kind of stuff in Denmark. I want to see it, but I think I've given up on my hopium for this team.
I see this team definitely getting out of group. I feel like they definitely got the easier group with everything going on for FPX and whatnot. So I feel like they should make it out of the group. Besides that, and after that, I don't see them making a deeper run than just getting out of groups. If anything, it would depend a little bit more on RB just going insane and having some insane performances, which we know that he does, but that puts a lot of pressure into that singular player and the way that everyone is able to complement it. I just don't think, it's one of those teams that you put kind of in the middle, that you're not really expecting it to surprise you, but you're not expecting them to get taken down right away.
I think my only strong opinion for DRX is the point that BCJ made about Stacks. Like, people saying that Stacks is the best, but he isn't. He's mediocre. BCJ is the best. And I just think, like, that's so fucking cap. Like, I understand it. BCJ, I think that you're great. But it's almost like, because Stacks is playing in a weaker region, it makes him look better. It's like, what else is he supposed to fucking do? Start, like, moonlighting in APAC. Just sort of play on another team and see if he can sort of build up the stats there for VLR. It's just, this guy wrote the book on Breach, and I think Breach is that agent that people know how strong he is, to the point that they're trying to sort of almost shoehorn him in onto Bind. And we're getting into times as well where, like, Split is still in play, at least in the competitive scene. There are a lot of teams that like to run Breach on that map and make it work. Haven, I think you kind of need to play Breach unless your KO utility is kind of on point. Yeah, it just sort of feels like, I think he's the thing that makes this happen. And the problem with DRX has always been, people watch them to take all of their strategies to use in the other regions, right? So DRX kind of keep Sturm and try and hide as much as possible and bring out a lot more, because we're in a meta where effectively every agent other than Phoenix works to an extent. So there's a lot of freedom for DRX to bring out some really kooky stuff. Maybe some Euro, we don't know, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm expecting from DRX, or what I want to see from DRX even.
Sure.
At least some Neon.
So along that line, then, I think the only team we haven't mentioned yet is Fnatic, who finally have a full roster coming into an event like this.
Don't jinx it. They still have to travel there.
That is, Jesus fucking Christ, man. I mean, God help them, really. They're in fucking London, cunt. How far is it to Copenhagen?
Durka will swim if he has to, I swear.
Yeah.
Like, he's that pissed off about missing the last one.
Oyster will construct a raft from fucking recyclable straws, tear his t-shirt off, and fucking sing into the sail to propel him across the ocean. That motherfucker will be
like a motor engine just to get it going as well.
Exactly. He's fine. Don't you worry about it. He can just talk into the water and create enough propulsion. They'll just be fucking crazy. All right, so what we think about this team, obviously Enzo and Alfie come into the lineup here. A lot of hype about Alfie as a player. Guy's fucking insane. Obviously, there were some challenges, right? Trying to get his visa and the literal facility burned down. Okay. Perky things. Still though, where are we at on a Fnatic? Are they a favorite? Are they not?
I'm high on this horse. I don't know why people are sometimes thinking that Fnatic might not be as strong as we think, but these guys are still a team that went undefeated in stage 2. Alpha Air looks fucking awesome for sure online right now, and mechanically his decision making is quite cool as well. I just love like some of the games where you're watching him satchel charge to cancel a plant to be able to get some round wins. Enzo's definitely like has been like the missing piece that Boaster needed to be able to help out Fnatic as a whole as like a secondary voice for the team. Also being able to play that initiator where Boaster could just focus on smoking and fragging. That also helps Boaster into his own fragging department. Mystic, for example, that I always joked about was like the one that flashed his teammate to allow Fnatic to lose against Sentinels in Berlin for Masters 2. Has been looking really good on this role, and of course you have Durka. That's fucking Durka, right? He went from top 21 to top 2 on everybody's lists from last year to this year. We haven't even had a chance to see him fucking pop off online yet, and we almost had it. He made it there, and then he just had to fly back after, unfortunately. So hopefully we'll be able to see it. My bigger question mark, which is still a hot take for a lot of people still, is how is Alpha Air going to perform on stage? I personally have ranked all of the rookies going into all the rookies this year and all the rookies going into Masters quite low, outside even of my top 10. And everybody says that I'm capping on that one as well. And I'm more than happy to be proven wrong. If Alpha Air could actually continue the way that he does on LAN as he does the online play, then yeah, definitely he's a top 5 player going into Masters 2 for sure.
I almost feel that the Alpha Air discussion is almost irrelevant. I don't think that that's the thing that I'm looking for Fnatic. Like, Fnatic are the third reason why it's like I've got OpTic, because Fnatic have looked insane. Like, they genuinely have not looked bad in a map at all this stage with this squad. But what happens if they lose? What happens if they just lose a series and go down to a lower bracket early on? Like, have they got what OpTic has in droves, being able to bounce back and adjust? To an extent, I don't think it's Alpha that you're looking at to completely falter, because the guy will play Viper and Killjoy when needed. Like, this is somebody that kind of like knows his role and what he's supposed to do, to a point where I don't think it's Alpha go kill, set up the strategy he needs to go clutch at around 3K. He just kind of like knows what spots to exploit. He follows the line of the letter to what Fnatic want to do, right, compositionally and with that sort of macro play style. I just think that does Mini, Boaster, Enzo have that capability to lose up against the team, play them 2 days later, and have enough about them to adjust and go forward with whatever else? If they do, like, this is, for me, Fnatic's tournament to lose. I think OpTic are favorites, but Fnatic, if they play anywhere near as good as they have through the stages, are just going to absolutely make mincemeat of everybody, because they have been superb this stage.
Yeah.
Why don't you guys make some preds then? Fuck it. Let's talk about who we think is going to get out of the groups here. Maybe for some, for Group A, this may be, I don't know how hard this is going to be, right? Just want to remind you guys, Group A consists of OpTic, Guild, Loud, and Crew. So, Vans, we'll do it in order of the portraits here. So, Vans, you get the pleasure of going for, get fucked, right? You're going to have to figure this one out. You have some
I
time,
already did my pick'ems, so I'm good. I'm just going to look here on my VLR Spike / Rib and whatever website it exists for Valorant, and then just say it. So, I have OpTic and Loud. I don't need to say why, because we just spent an hour and a half talking about every single team.
All right, fine. Then, well, okay. OpTic's probably going to get out, right? I think Loud. I think Loud.
And then Loud second.
I think OpTic. OpTic, Loud. Yeah, I'm with you there, Vans. All right. Guess you didn't have as much time as I thought, Dryad.
I also did my pick'ems, and he had OpTic, of course, and then he had Crew. We also mentioned it. We also talked about it. Why I think Crew should be able to get up to win the first matchup. So yeah, I'm going Crew.
Okay, I like that. So OpTic, Loud from me, OpTic, Crew from you. Dryan, are you gonna be the only one to pred Guild getting out of this group?
Oh no. It's doable, but I just think that like OpTic, Loud, let's be honest, shouldn't fucking be in this stage of the tournament. Like Loud especially, I think should. I feel like, I think it was Tom that said this, of just because Loud got the furthest in the tournament, that it should be them, even if it's 2 LATAM teams coming through and only 1 Brazilian team. Loud by proxy should get thrown into playoffs and then have Crew and Leviatan playing that position. I don't know why they're here. They shouldn't be here.
Yeah. Okay.
You could sort of say something similar with OpTic, but top 2 teams from Reykjavik. I don't think that they faltered enough to actually not make it out of groups.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm obviously OpTic Loud. You put me down the bottom of the list as the prediction you want to put the least amount of stock in. So we can breeze past that and talk about Group B, which consists of FPX, Xerxia, DRX, and Northeption. Vans, you're up first again, mate. Having a look at this. I mean, this is hard. This is a fucking hard bracket to figure out, I think. Well, I mean, by process of elimination, it can only be one of 3 teams, but I'm curious to hear what order you think they're going to get out in.
Yeah, I have DRX as probably my number 1 seed. I think they'll still be able to beat Xerxia going into the groups, just because of the slow defaults that they play, slow style versus potentially Xerxia trying to play like PRX. It could be stopped. But the tough one is between Xerxia and Northeption, but I still have Xerxia because I have them as my dark horse.
Okay. Right. I'll go last. Fuck it.
What the fuck?
You
said we were going by portrait, asshole.
Well, I was last. Yeah, but then they didn't do that. Production put me last.
Oh,
you know.
I see.
All right, Dryad. What do you think?
All right, so I also got DRX first seed, and then for the second, I put Xerxia. I feel like for a weekend FPX and for Northeption, that I feel like it's not going to be to the same level as they did in the grand finals. It's just for Xerxia to take.
Okay. Ryan, MEA, hopium, is it there? Is it dead?
Yeah, FPX come out top of the group, even with standards. Like, I
Woo!
think,
Okay.
like, if we actually had the full 5 players there,
That's fucking
when they're
spicy.
playing the best, like FPX is the best team in the world when they're playing their best. The problem is they played the best Valorant in the world when they're on top of it. The problem is they play consistently bad Valorant, more so than anybody. But the fact that they're so fucking good when they're good sort of makes it look like it's sort of average, right? So, like, nobody can touch FPX when they're playing as well as they have. But there's so many fundamental errors that they make, like pushing 1 by 1, not checking some of the angles. Obviously, there's a lot going on in Angel's life, especially that makes it hard to just have this team be in the right mindset, right? But I do think that FPX have
Despite
something
that,
special.
motherfuckers out there playing Euro and officials, by the way.
And
still
winning,
good on Breeze, though.
Firstly winning at least. Like,
Yeah.
People are shitting on FPX using fucking Yoru, but it's actually quite good on how
we
they
broke
play.
down we broke down that breeze round from him when he was
Yeah,
keeping
that's
forward onto
insane.
the A side. It was kind of
Yeah.
But people just think about the Euro that they use on Icebox or some shit. And then
Well,
they're
you mean the
like,
one that TP's A side and gets shot in the
Yeah.
back of the head? Well,
it's
yes.
just like Angel is worth his weight in gold for this kind of team. Even if he wasn't there, you know that he's just effectively going to act as the coach. And everybody, if you can bring an artist into a team where he's not playing selfishly as a duelist and playing with the team, you've got something amazing there to pull a guy that was saying, I walk on fucking water in this game, to
Yep.
supporting his teammates and playing Breach. Like, that's hard to do, right? Imagine
All right,
Ye
then.
playing Breach.
So who's your second team getting through then? FPX first.
Probably DRX. I could
Okay.
definitely see a case where DRX just beat Northeption twice. Like, good series, it's kind of one of those things where you want to see Northeption, but DRX just fundamentally diff Northeption. I think it's close, but yeah, I just think that FPX in a series against DRX are just going to do typical FPX bullshit stuff where Angel's playing Jet and they're going to win.
So you guys don't think that Northeption has a chance getting out of this group? Do you think they have a chance against DRX in that matchup? Anybody, or is it just is a wash for them? You think?
I don't.
No, I
Damn.
think that there's still upset potential with Xerxia and DRX. I don't think it's clear cookie cut that they're going to be first out of groups.
I can
could
definitely see
them
DRX having to
losing
play
to
Northeption
in the
twice.
first
though.
series.
Yeah, losing to Northeption would be huge
Like
as well.
for my pick'ems, like for OpTic, for example, I got them losing that first series against Guild. But in the
Okay.
rematch in the deciding qualifying spot, that's where OpTic win. It's that kind of thing, I think, where DRX have that ability to come back swinging against their opponent. It just first time playing Jitters, probably going to be like an hour tech pause, right, and stuff. So it feels like that kind of stuff where some of the teams that you're looking to do well are going to be a bit rocky to begin with.
I just can't. I can't put FPX getting out of this group, no matter how hard I try and fucking frame her. I just can't do it. I don't know. I think Xerxia are going to get out over DRX. I think DRX had to get through the lower bracket. But again, this is such a fucking messy group. Yeah, so
Nobody's
I say
under
Xerxia.
Northeption
Yeah.
train. Nobody's under Northeption
I
train.
can't. I mean, you literally. I'll be honest.
No.
I didn't watch their fucking playoff game. I use you as a resource, and from everything that you said, I was like, okay, seems like regionally they're strong, but against these teams internationally, like it just doesn't, like it doesn't exactly evoke great feelings of hope for this roster.
The question I have about Northeption as somebody that again watched a little bit of it and didn't watch too much of Masters Reykjavik at the time, like at the point where like Zeta Division especially were just
sabbatical. Yes.
Did Zeta Division look as good as they did at Reykjavik?
No.
So
did not.
could
Did
it be a
not.
similar thing where for like Crew where they showed up massively at Champions, kind of came back to earth a little bit in Reykjavik? Like if that's the case for Zeta Division, then realistically we can't put Northeption that much higher, right? Because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people are going into it going, Zeta Division got third. Japan's like a major region now in Valorant. So Northeption beating them means that they're second best in the world.
Of course.
That to me doesn't quite feel like accurate, I guess.
No, there was a lot of mistakes still being made by Zeta Division. I don't know if it was the jitters of the grand finals or something like that, because they did not look good. They were supposed to win Icebox. They let a lead slip. They did some mistakes on trying to
Yeah.
have a flank when they have a Viper spit down. It just didn't look like it was coordinated, as coordinated and as hype as it was when they were playing during Masters 1.
Okay. Well, there you have it. There's our predictions. I mean, based on fuck all, as it often is the case, but you know, nice to have a little bit of an inkling going. And make sure you do your pick'ems as well. I remember we have a bet. Nostromo gets banned if Northeption don't make top 2. If they do, we apologize. You're fucked, mate. I'm so glad to run this little bet back. I'm not gonna lie. Ryan, mate, thanks for coming back on the show, buddy. What is coming up for you? You said you're going to Copenhagen.
Yeah, gonna go for the last couple of days. Don't know what that's gonna be like, to be honest. I imagine it's gonna be crazy, but there's also probably gonna be just some stupid shit that happens there. So
Take some pictures for us.
I will try. I will try. And also, yeah, just still trying to take it easy mostly. I think
Hell yeah.
I only realized it when I took my break of like I've been just trying hard to just get to that like tier 1 level of Valorant for like fucking 2 years. Like I need to rest.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I've been playing a lot of classic WoW and Disney Mirrorverse as well on the iPad, which is not feeding into my wallet as much as Valorant. So yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, I mean, take a break and enjoy Copenhagen, buddy. Dan, thanks for coming on the show once again. Good to get some of your insight as well on what's going on in that LATAM and Brazil region as well. And I think your predictions were pretty saucy. It's good to have you on the show.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Big shout out to my boys at Twitch. Thanks for supporting the show. Thanks for enabling us to do this every week. We'll see you guys later. Next week, of course. Much more to talk about. We're getting ever closer to Copenhagen kicking off. Get excited, everybody. Valorant is starting to get a little spicy. Don't go too far. In the meantime, next Tuesday, 11 a.m. PT. We'll see you there.